Crypto bros make money literally by making money, and they've made over $1 trillion out of thin air. They'll accuse the U.S. government of making money out of thin air. Maybe we do, but we're the U.S. government.
If you believe we have crashed craft, stated earlier, do we have the bodies of the pilots who piloted this craft?
As I've stated publicly already in my News Nation interview, biologics came with some of these recoveries, yeah.
Were they, I guess, human or non-human biologics?
Non-human, and that was the assessment of people with direct knowledge on the program I talked to that are currently still on the program.
Tic-tac, like the candy, not TikTok like the Chinese Communist app.
That's correct.
Could a human survive those G-forces with known technology today?
No.
What we saw with 4 sets of eyes over a 5-minute period, still, there's nothing, we have nothing close to it.
We were primarily seeing dark gray or black cubes inside of a clear sphere.
And are not worthy of further study. I'd say that's the biggest understatement. Any personal knowledge of people who have been harmed or injured in efforts to cover up or conceal these extraterrestrial technology?
Yes. Personally.
Have anyone been murdered that you would think, that you know of or have heard of, I guess?
I have to be careful asking that question. I directed people with that knowledge to the appropriate authorities.
How do you know that these were not our aircraft?
Some of the behaviors that we saw in a working area, we would see these objects being at 0.0 Mach, that's 0 airspeed, over certain pieces of the ground. So what that means, just like a river, if you throw a bobber in, it's going to float downstream. These objects were staying completely stationary in Category 4 hurricane winds. These same objects would then accelerate to supersonic speeds, 1.1, 1.2 Mach, and they would do so in very erratic and quick behaviors that I don't have an explanation for.
You have mentioned that there's interdimensional potential. Could you expound on that?
And in terms of multidimensionality, that kind of thing, the framework that I'm familiar with, for example, is something called the holographic principle. It derives itself from general relativity and quantum mechanics, and that is, if you want to imagine a 3D object such as yourself casting a shadow onto a 2D surface, that's the holographic principle. So you can be projected, quasi-projected from higher dimensional space to lower dimensional. It's a scientific trope that you can actually cross, literally, as far as I understand, but there's probably guys with PhDs that we could probably argue about that.
And Senator, every week I get briefed by my team, sometimes 2 or 3 times a week, on this situation with the unaccompanied migrant kids and where we stand. I've never heard that number of 85,000. I don't know where it comes from.
Okay. Okay.
And so I can't attest. I would say it doesn't sound at all to be realistic. And what we do is we try to follow up as best we can with these kids. Congress has given us certain authorities. Our authorities essentially end the moment we have found a suitable sponsor to place that child with. We try to do some follow-up, but neither the child or the sponsor is actually obligated to follow up with us. And we make every effort to follow up with them as best we can.
Tell me this, please. Can you give a breakdown of how many full-time employees are at their desk in one of these buildings every day?
Senator, when you take a look at the workforce at HHS, and we're close to 90,000 throughout the country, and working in various parts of the country, some here in headquarters. By the way, headquarters, we have an underground.
I got limited time, so this may be misleading. So tell me, of what % of the employees are at their desk, full-time employees are at the desk on any given day? And I don't mean to be rude, it's just so limited time.
No, and I appreciate that. And our folks are working full-time.
No, but how many are at their desk as opposed to being at home or someplace else, a coffee shop or whatever?
Yeah, what we make sure we care about is that they're performing and they're delivering, and that's why.
Well, that's not really answering my question, because I know the best practices now in many industries is to bring people back in. So is it 5%? Is it 10%? Is it 1%? How many folks are actually sitting at their desk in a government building when they are working full-time every day?
And we have folks who, as they're working full-time.
So it's kind of not a... Clearly, sir, you don't want to answer that question.
By the way, we're down. You have produced 350 pages to us in the reading room For over a year, we've been asking for the last 50 pages. This is what the 50 pages look like, okay? Now, again, I would argue congressional oversight should not be subject to the same redactions that were applied under a FOIA request. I'm asking you, will you commit today to provide our oversight? And Senator Paul is on this now. Again, we had 5 members of Homeland Security Governmental Affairs under a law that says you shall provide this. Will you commit to provide us the last 50 pages of communication between Anthony Fauci, Francis Collins, Jamie Farrar, as relates to the origin of the coronavirus? Will you commit to that?
Senator, I absolutely will commit to make sure we follow up with you on your request to get some of that information. Again, this is in compliance with the law that you receive the information. I don't know what particular statute with regard to disclosure was applied here, but you are absolutely entitled to the information that by law a member of the Senate or the House should get.
Again, you're not complying with the law because you're redacting things, for example, under deliberative process between and within agencies, and it's communication outside of the agencies with the welcome trust. Again, these redactions are not complying with the law.
Do you think appreciation of assets that are not sold, unrealized gain, should be taxed?
I think you should have to prepay tax on it that will eventually be due at sale, gift, or bequest.
What do you
Secretary Mayorkas, how many people have entered the country illegally across our southern border since the Biden administration took office? A number.
Senator, it's over 6 million encounters at our southern border.
And how many of those 6 million are still in the country?
Senator, I can get you that information.
So do you know?
Senator, I don't want to.
Would you provide us with a number of how many of those 6 million that crossed our border illegally are still in the country?
I would be pleased to provide you with any data that you request, Senator.
Of the 2.5 million that crossed our southern border illegally last year, how many of them remain in the country?
Again, Senator, I'd be very pleased to provide you with the data with respect to how many removals have been effected, how many voluntary removals, how many forced removals, how many expulsions, how many individuals
But you came to the hearing today and you don't have those numbers? You are the head of DHS and you came to this hearing today without those numbers.
That is correct, and I'd be pleased to provide you with that data. We certainly have it at our disposal.
We've asked for them before and we haven't got them, so we'll be looking forward to getting them.
Dr. Zanton, are you pro-choice with regard to patients making individualized medical choices?
Broadly, thank you, yes.
Are you aware that your university doesn't allow choice with regard to vaccination, that you require all of your students to have 3 vaccines in order to be students?
Yes.
So it's sort of choice, but not so much when regarding vaccination. Are you aware of the increased risk of myocarditis with the COVID vaccine, particularly with successive COVID vaccinations in males between the ages of 16 and 24?
Senator, thank you for the question. I'm prepared to talk about the nursing crisis and that we have vaccine requirements across the board for a lot
Here's the problem. If you exclude everybody from being a nurse who believes in basic immunology, you're going to include a lot of smart people who believe that you can get immunity from both vaccination as well as infection. And if you say, well, we're just not going to take the people who believe in that old-fashioned infection thing, providing immunity, we're only going to take the people who will do as they're told. I mean, do you think individuals should be treated the same when they come to the emergency room? If you got an 18-year-old with chest pain and a 68-year-old obese diabetic with chest pain, you think they get treated the same in the emergency room?
Thank you. I will take into consideration what you've said and I'll bring it back to you.
Well, it's an individual decision and you ought to be able to answer, at least be honest and look backwards. The thing is the CDC says if your kids had myocarditis, got sick and went to the hospital, as soon as he gets better, give him another one. I think most parents in the country would say that's a stupid idea and defies all common sense, and they would resist this. But when the government tells you to do it, and it's a really stupid idea that defies common sense, guess what? People lose trust in government.
I know on that day, on March 29th, you did not say that we had a crisis. My question for you is today, do you believe that we have a crisis before us?
Senator, let me make this point that is very, very important, because I've been asked, would I describe it as a disaster? Would I describe it as a crisis? I do not diminish the significance and the complexity of the challenge. No, if I may.
Well, I
do
only
not
have
diminish.
5 minutes and I only have 3 left.
I
So
do
is it a
not
crisis, yes
diminish-
or not?
I do
guess
not-
I'm going to move on. Secretary Bashara, do you think that we have a child care crisis, affordable child care crisis in this country?
Senator, I don't think there's any doubt
Yeah,
that we
okay,
have.
that's what I thought.
Nobody wants these electric vehicles unless you're an elite that can afford them. People in my district sure as hell don't want them. So keep going. Why are we doing this? Is it over CO2?
Yeah, we're doing it for 3 reasons. Even though the EV revolution is going to happen anyway. I think
It's a
that's
revolution caused
I
by
would love to be able to answer your question, Congressman.
Yeah, okay.
Even though we think that transition is happening in the automotive sector no matter what, there are 3 things that we think are not guaranteed. Will it happen quickly enough to materially help with climate change? Will it happen on equitable terms that are available to people who aren't wealthy and
Okay,
might
I'm
not be
running
able?
short on time, so
If I could just please finish my answer.
Let's drill
If I
on the
could
climate
just
change.
finish
There's
the
others
third.
we'll
Will
let's
it be
drill
made
the
on
climate.
American
It's
soil
about
or not?
CO2, isn't it?
How's
what
that?
What percent of the atmosphere is CO2 that we're chasing here?
I'm sorry?
What percent of the atmosphere is CO2 that we're chasing here? Because you talked about climate change.
I don't know the percentage of atmospheric gases.
You don't know the
that exist
percent
in
of the
CO2.
atmosphere.
What I can tell you is that climate change is real. We got to do something about it.
Yeah, this one's
And
called
we've been-
autumn, sir. So
I'm sorry?
This one's called autumn right now, so yeah.
I'm sorry, I couldn't make out what you said, sir.
This climate change right now is called autumn, yes.
Yeah, that's the seasons changing, which
Mhm.
respectively is not the same thing as the climate changing.
This company, which I financially disclose, has properties, okay? It manages over 1,000 acres of land for hunting purposes. It owns different properties. I'm one of the largest landowners in my home area, okay? I went to the bank and I borrowed money and I bought that land. I didn't get wires from Romania, China. My family doesn't get wires, okay? Never loaned my brother money. Don't have an LLC. But you and Goldman, who is Mr. Trust Fund, continue to try to
reclaiming my
discredit-
time.
No, I'm not going to give you your time back. We can stop the clock. You all continue to, you look like a Smurf here just going around and all this stuff. Now listen.
Mr. Chairman, you
No,
have.
I'm going to tell you
no,
something.
hold on. If we're not on
continue to
time, we
spew
can just,
disinformation.
You have gone on TV and said the president did something illegal. You're doing stuff with your brother. The American people have the same questions. Why should they believe you? Why should they believe you? Why should they believe you? There's a different rule for the president. There's a different rule for you. Why should they believe what you're saying, Mr. Chairman? Why? You go on Fox News and say loans and deals are a way to evade taxes. We don't know that's what you're doing or not. We don't know. We have no idea. We're supposed to take your word for it. But when the president
Well, you've
says
already
something,
been proven a liar, Mr. Moskowitz.
What's that?
You've already been proven a liar. Today.
Who's proven me a liar? You?
Yes.
Your word means
Well,
nothing, Mr. Chairman.
Go to my hometown. There's a camera crew there today, an opposition research crew there today.
Mr. Chairman, this seems to have gotten under your skin.
I'll pay for your ticket.
I think the American people have lots of questions, Mr. Chairman, and perhaps you should sit maybe for a deposition.
I will be happy. I will sit with Hunter Biden and Jim Biden, and we can go over our LLCs.
That'll be great. I'll make sure the ranking member is happy that you'll sit at a table.
Mr. Chairman, I make a point of order that we should return to regular order for the benefit of the other members.
The ranking member makes a good point.
I'll reclaim my time, Mr. Chairman. I'll wrap it up quickly.
Have you had personal contact with anyone at FBI headquarters about the Hunter Biden investigation?
I don't recollect the answer to that question, but the FBI works for the Justice Department. It's.
I'm sorry. You don't recollect. You don't recollect whether you've talked with anybody at FBI headquarters about an investigation into the president's son?
I don't believe that I did.
71% of the 8.4 million people that you have allowed to come into our country illegally Let me be conservative and use 6.6 million because the 8.4 includes gotaways. 71% of the 6.6 million people that you have allowed into our country illegally would not be hurt in any way. They could claim asylum from political or religious or racial persecution, but they would have to do it in another country, more than likely Mexico. Is that not the case?
Senator, that is an incomplete and inaccurate accounting of the safe third country.
And did you not say, when we last spoke, and I proposed that, you thought it was a bad policy?
Senator, let me share with you a prerequisite to a safe third country agreement, and that is...
No, I'm almost out of time, and I'm not going to let you filibuster, Mr. Secretary.
Well, Senator, I have to say that 60 minutes...
Well, I'm just not going to let you do
Senator
it.
Kennedy, if he can respond, you are out of time, but I'd like to...
It's my time, Madam Chair, and I'm going to use it the way I want.
Your time is expired.
Well, you let others go on. Here's what I think, Mr. Secretary. I think you're a smart guy. Now, there are only one or two things going on here. Either you're not qualified to manage a Costco food court, or you believe in open borders. And I think it's the latter.
Senator Kennedy, your time has expired. Thank you.
I would just say the following two things. Number one, you're 0 for 2 on that. You're inaccurate in both respects, number one. And I'd like the record to reflect that 60 minutes is not 45 minutes, because I can't seem to answer a question without being interrupted. I just wanted to make that comment.
Well, if you would answer a question.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I appreciate the recognition.
So January 6th, did you lose count of the number of federal assets? Did you lose count and order an audit?
Gentleman's time has expired.
I get an answer to the question of did they lose count?
No, let him answer the question.
The time has expired. The Attorney General can respond.
China is the most aggressive, most dangerous adversary that the
General,
United States faces, and we are doing everything within our power to rebut that, to stop that, to prevent their invasions, both kinetic, and through cyberspace. And we will continue to do
If someone gave that answer in your courtroom when you were a judge, you would tell them they were being non-responsive and you would direct them to answer the question.
Point of order, Your Honor.
Time is...
Thank you. Mr. Allen, have you ever used Twitter, yes or no?
I have utilized Twitter, yes.
Okay, and is your account at Marcus A970-50645?
That is absolutely not my account.
Okay, that's not your account. Well, on December 5th, 2022, an account under the name Marcus Allen retweeted a tweet that said,
That is not my account, ma'am.
You haven't let me finish the question, sir.
Might have been the football player.
You haven't let me finish the question. And the time is mine. On December 5th, 2022, an account under the name of Marcus Allen retweeted a tweet that said, quote, Nancy Pelosi staged January 6th, retweet if you agree, end quote. Do you agree with that statement? Yes or no?
That is, I don't, no ma'am. That's not my account at all.
I'm asking whether you agree with that statement, yes or no?
Can you please rephrase the statement?
Yeah. Do you think
the
that
gentlelady
Nancy
has
Pelosi
expired.
staged January 6th? I just want him to answer
He'll answer.
this
He'll
last
answer.
question.
Yeah, he'll answer. I'm just telling you your time's up.
Do you believe that Nancy Pelosi, do you agree with the statement that this person tweeted that Nancy Pelosi staged January 6th? Yes or no?
No.
Thank you.
We can kind of almost see the end. We're vaccinating so very fast. Our data from the CDC today suggests, that vaccinated people do not carry the virus, don't get sick, and that it's not just in the clinical trials, but it's also in real-world data.
I don't know if you can justify or how you justify forcing my constituents to pay for EVs and EV infrastructure for coastal elites and wealthy people, but somehow you do.
Well, I need to point out that wealthy people were specifically excluded from the Inflation Reduction Act.
Well,
We
I
wish
just
we could have
gave
had
you the
your
number.
support on
Do you
cutting the cost
dispute
of
that
these.
2/3 of EV owners are owned by people over 100,000 that make over 100,000? Do you
Sure, because
dispute that?
the first EVs, of course, were
Do you
acquired by
dispute
more.
that?
No, but that number's going down.
Those are the facts. It doesn't matter if they're going down now.
Why were you
the folks
against
that
cutting
I
the price of
represent
EVs?
can't afford them today, sir.
Why were you against cutting their costs?
All these factors. I'm not against cutting their costs. The market should do it. But you want the government, you want my taxpayers to pay to cut the cost, which isn't cutting the cost.
If you were of the
it's
view,
subsidizing the cost.
respectfully, Congressman,
Sir,
if you were
with
of the
all
view
these
that there should be
factors
no
combined,
subsidy to propulsion
all these
vehicles, then are
factors
you against oil and
combined
gas
mean subsidies? that for
You
every
believe that oil
EV
and gas
sold, sir,
subsidies
at a loss, that the cost of the, as my colleague on the other side, the gas-guzzling pickup truck is higher now to pay for the loss as you kill your administration, and you in particular, kill the auto industry. And I'll remind you, in 2008, after the financial crisis, the federal government bailed out this industry. So while you're here today, will you commit and will you pledge to oppose any effort to bail out the auto industry after you force it into bankruptcy again? Will you do that today, sir?
Congressman, I got started in politics when
I guess the answer is no. I
Indiana
yield the
Everybody can see it. The fire Shokin or the United States won't give the $1 billion. If that is not quid pro quo, sir, what is? I will tell you what it is, and America agrees with me. It's bribery, and it's impeachable. Are you going to do something about it? I bet you're not, and that's why you, sir, also need to be impeached. I yield back.
Time of the gentleman has expired.
Great. Thank you very much, Michael.
Looks like my high school algebra teacher, Manager.
Like an Avengers movie right now.
Our robot is able to overcome more challenging terrain than similarly sized wheeled or tracked machines. It can move on rocks, sand, hills, ice, and snow, and can climb up and down stairs. If our robot falls or gets knocked over, it can even operate upside down or can right itself to complete the mission. The Vision 60 can operate in austere environments from -40 to 130 degrees Fahrenheit.
Why do you think so many wealthy people are leaving New York City?
New York City is, an incredible city of innovation, immigration, entrepreneurship.
Yeah, but why are so many wealthy people leaving?
I think there are big advantages to living near centers of entrepreneurial activity, and we see that on the West
You think
Coast
they're
as well.
leaving to be nearer to centers of entrepreneurial activity, do you?
Well, I don't think there are a lot of people, fleeing New York City.
More people are moving out of our area. There is new data showing that New Jersey and New York are among the states most people are leaving. We've heard this before. Now there's new evidence.
New York City has.
Sure they are. There are thousands. I mean, there have been study after study after study. Why are so many wealthy people leaving New York City?
I think there's an enormous number of wealthy people who are in New York City and continue.
But why are so many leaving?
I can't speak to why particular people
I can
leave.
tell you
I
why.
know
It's
that-
taxes. You know that as well as I do. It's
I
taxes.
think if you look at the economic.
Some of it's crime, but most of it is taxes.
Well,
people vote with their feet. The same reason that people are leaving California and moving to Austin.
If you look at California, it's one of the most successful economies in the world, and it continues to be so. It attracts people.
But they're
as
losing
well.
people.
I don't think it's in any danger of decline.
Recent data show over the last 2 years, California's population lost 500,000 people.
Nor is New York City, and these are very vibrant places.
I don't think we're going to
for
ever
fundamental
agree.
reasons. Yeah.
I don't think we're going to ever agree.
People have different preferences. If you look at where immigrants choose to live in the United States, they often go to those same places that you were talking about. So I do think that, there's movement in both directions.
I ask you again, Mr. Chu, has ByteDance spied on American citizens?
The parent company of TikTok, known as ByteDance, which is based in China, did an internal review that found that a handful of employees had indeed accessed the data of U.S. TikTok users, including 2 journalists.
I don't think that spying is the right way to describe it.
All right.
This is ultimately...
We can differ on
this
that.
Is, this is ultimately an internal...
Can you guarantee that no one at ByteDance
had a role in preparing you for today's hearing?
Like I said, Congressman, this is a high-profile hearing. A lot of people around the world were sending me wishes and unsolicited advice, but I prepared for this hearing with my team here in D.C.
Yes or no? Do any ByteDance employees in China, including engineers, currently have access to U.S. user data?
Today, all U.S. user data is stored by default in the Oracle Cloud infrastructure, and access to that is controlled by American
ByteDance
personnel.
Employees in China, including engineers, currently have access to U.S. data?
Congressman, I would appreciate this. This is a complex topic. Today, all data is stored by default.
No, it's not that complex. Yes or no, do they have access to user data?
After Project Texas is done, the answer is no. Today, there is still some data that we need to delete.
I'll disclose with the FBI had 3.4 million backdoor searches of the FISA database without a warrant in 2021. Can you say whether the FBI is continuing to search the FISA database without a warrant for Americans?
Well, if you're asking about our use of 702 queries, those are, there is no warrant requirement under the Fourth Amendment for those queries. It's fairly well settled. The 3.4 million figure that you're talking about, I guess I would say a couple things. One, that's not 3.4 million people. That's 3.4 million search terms or query terms. Second, that's not those are not queries in violation of rules. Those are just queries under the
My time has expired, but the committee will look into the warrant requirement later.
Sure will. Antifa, which Mr. Rosas, apparently the expert now in organized terrorist activity, has overruled the FBI director who says, there's a headline, says Antifa is an ideology, not an organization. No. Let's not listen to the FBI director. Let's listen to, sorry, what's your title? Senior writer at Town Hall, who is going to tell us that the FBI director is wrong. And I'd like to introduce, there's no question. I'd like to introduce, by unanimous consent, an AP article saying the FBI director says Antifa is an ideology, not an organization.
Without objection, so ordered.
Can I respond to that?
No, you cannot. I didn't ask a question.
It's the gentleman's time. He can spend it any way he chooses.
Thing that one of my colleagues said about you a little while ago. I'd like to give you time to go ahead and do that.
Yeah, thank you, Congressman. Well, I think it's funny to be lectured by an heir to the Levi Strauss Corporation, and honestly, that's probably why he doesn't consider property damage to be that big of a deal, because not only does he have that, but he also has what some would describe an impossibly good stock portfolio.
The things you have done over and repeated over and over and over again is that to point out that Mr. Weiss was appointed as U.S. Attorney by President Trump, as though that somehow inoculates him from criticism by us. Is that really how this game is played? That if someone is appointed by a Republican, then they're supposed to be on the Republican team? Or if they're appointed by a Democrat, they're on the Democrat team? You were appointed by Mr. Biden, weren't you? Are you on the Democrat team?
Let me just be clear. The point that he was appointed by a Republican counteracts the claim that this was a partisan decision to benefit Democrats.
He remained as a member of the Department of Justice.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Roth, did you write this tweet?
I regret the language that I used in some of my former tweets, but yes, I did post that.
And I'll read the tweet so it's in the record. Yes, that person in the pink hat is clearly a bigger threat to your brand of feminism than actual Nazis in the White House.
In 2018, the Iranian Ayatollah Khomeini.
Now, did Twitter do that?
It sounds like the Green New Deal to me.
It is unbelievable to me that I am quoting Elon Musk, but that is how ridiculous this hearing has become. The Oversight Committee, like Twitter or any other social media company for that matter, cannot become a free-for-all hellscape where anything goes. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Ms. Naravoli, earlier you testified about a 2019 tweet that was about President Trump, and I think it was from Ms. Teagan. What was the tweet about?
Would you like me to give the direct quote?
Yeah.
Please excuse my language. This is a direct quote, but Chrissy Teigen referred to Donald Trump as a pussy-ass bitch.
Okay.
You, ladies and gentlemen, interfered with the United States of America 2020 presidential election, knowingly and willingly. That's the bad news. It's going to get worse because this is the investigation part. Later comes the arrest part.
In the lead up to January 6th, Twitter decided to allow Donald Trump and countless MAGA extremists to use the platform to spread Trump's ridiculous big lie and disinformation about the election. And soon the internet was replete with incitement for civil war, race war, insurrection, revolution, and mob violence.
You silenced members of Congress from communicating with their constituents. You silenced me from communicating with the American people over a freaking joke. Now, who the hell do you think that you are? Election interference? Yeah, I would say that that was taking place because of you four sitting here.
Whole hearing about a 24-hour hiccup in a right-wing political operation. That is why we are here right now. But instead, we're talking about Hunter Biden's half-fake laptop story. I mean, this is an embarrassment, but I'll go into it.
We're exchanging communications on Jira, a private cloud server, with CISA, NASS, NASED, and Alex Stamos, who now works at Stanford and is a former security officer at Facebook, to remove a posting. Do you now remember communicating on a private cloud server to remove a posting? Yes or no?
I wouldn't agree with the characterization.
I don't care if you agree. This is your stuff. Yes or no, did you communicate with a private entity, the government agency, on a private cloud server, yes or no?
The question was if I
Yes or no? Yeah, I'm on time. Yes or no?
Ma'am, I don't believe I can give you a yes or no.
Well, I'm going to tell you right now that you did, and we have proof of it.
American people need to understand what just happened. My Democrat colleague just asked the director of the FBI whether or not they are buying information about our fellow Americans, and the answer is, well, we'll just have to get back to you on that. It sounds really complicated, but I have other questions. I'm sitting here with my father. I will make certain that between the man sitting next to me and every person he knows and my ability to forever hold a grudge, that you will regret not following my direction. I am sitting here waiting for the call with my father. Sounds like a shakedown, doesn't it, Director?
I'm not going to get into commenting on that.
You seem deeply uncurious about it, don't you? Almost suspiciously uncurious. Are you protecting the Bidens?
Absolutely not. The FBI
well,
does not and has no interest in
You won't answer the question
anyone
about whether or not
politically.
that's a shakedown, and everybody knows why you won't answer it. Because to the millions of people who will see this, they know it is. And your inability to acknowledge that is deeply revealing.
We cannot let go of this obsession with fixating violence and inciting violence against trans and LGBT people, in addition to immigrants, in addition to women of color. This is a party that cannot pick on anyone their own size. And they are trying to co-opt an entire social media platform and use the power of this committee and of Congress in order to pursue a political agenda. I yield back.
The ability of America to have our own industry and not be dependent on China is a valuable resource. Why should those things for millions of Americans be sacrificed in favor of your agenda for radical climate change?
Senator, I know that there's like 1.9 jobs for every American in the country right now, so I know there's a lot of jobs.
Wait a minute. You're telling me we've got too many jobs in the country?
Well, I'm saying that we don't have enough people. That's why we are having a hard time finding folks to work at our department. But
wait, you're telling me that we have too many jobs for blue-collar work? Have you seen the number of jobs we have lost in this country to China in the last 20 years? Do you know where those jobs come from? Over 3 million jobs have gone to China. Do you know where those jobs have come from? They've come out of Midwestern towns like the ones I represent. They are blue-collar workers, and you're sitting here and telling me that we have too many jobs in this country? Are you serious?
Senator, we are working hard every single day. We have processed 20 mining applications, 20 mines or mining modification permits since January of 2021. We are moving forward. We're doing our jobs. We're fulfilling our mission for
You're
the
not moving
department.
forward. You're moving backward. You're shutting down and denying permits for mines in this country where we can develop our own resources. You're shutting down oil and natural gassing permits. You're approving taxes and royalties that deliberately suppress American energy development in favor of a climate change agenda. And now you're sitting here and telling me we've got too many jobs in this country. We've got gobs of jobs in this country. We don't need any more jobs in this country.
Do you believe that FBI agents should go to the home of a father in Philadelphia suburbs?
I'm not going to second guess the judgment of the career agents on the ground who made the determination.
But your job is to second guess and look at what they're doing. Your job is to review what they do. Your job is to protect the American people from a tyrannical FBI storming the home of an American family.
I could not disagree more with your description of the FBI as tyrannical.
You don't believe it's tyrannical that FBI agents were a part of storming a father's home in suburban Philadelphia?
Is it staggering? Is it a staggering responsibility that the head of a bank could literally crash our economy? It's astonishing. That's like if you have, I mean, like, and they also realize is that now they have a guaranteed way to be saved. By no matter how, you know. So it's you know, isn't it appropriate that this kind of control should be more stricter to prevent this kind of thing from going, or should we just go on and start bailing and sailing whoever bank, regardless of how their conduct is? You know, I'll give you an example. The Republicans want to give a work requirement for SNAP. You know, for a hungry family has to have this kind of penalties or some kinds of working required. Shouldn't you have a working requirement after we sail your bank with billions of your bank? Because they seem to be more preoccupied than SNAP and requirements for works for hungry people, but not about protecting the taxpayers, you know, that will bail no matter whatever does about a bank to crash it. Chair?
One of the things we did this year was to give HSI the flexibility to use whatever branding they felt was necessary to increase cooperation in the communities. So in other words, if removing the ICE moniker completely and just using the HSI brand was going to result in greater cooperation, they had the flexibility to do so. We've also removed or gave them the option of removing the ICE part of their email exchange address so that it's just hsi.dhs.gov instead of the ICE piece of that.
Can you tell me if you have an opinion on what the IRS's reputation is amongst the country? Have you done any polling or anything like that? To see what generally taxpayers think, middle, wealthy people, bottom. I mean, are they kind of like the National Park Service? Are they a little different? What do you think their impression is?
Well, it's extremely negative because the IRS has been starved for resources. And so there are insufficient
I don't mean to cut you off, but I've got even less time than the ranking member does. So you think it's resource related that they have a bad reputation? It's nothing to do with historical culture in the agency or anything like that.
The agency has been resource starved.
Any company of any size in China is required by Chinese law to have what they quaintly call a committee, which is essentially a cell inside the company whose sole function is to ensure that company's compliance with Chinese Communist Party orthodoxy. If we tried to install something like that, in American companies, or if the British tried to do it in British companies or any number of other places, people would go out of their minds, and rightly so.
Agreed. Well, thank you. I'd like to work with you more on that, and I'd yield the balance of my time to the chairman. Thank you.
But that's exactly what you did. And the judge said it last week. Every week you were meeting with big tech companies saying, hey, look at this. This violates your policy. Take this speech of Americans down. You were doing the same darn thing you just described the Chinese about.
This proposed rule is not a ban on gas stoves. This proposed rule is not a ban on gas stoves. We are regulating indoor air pollution.
Same, but different. But still same.
I can only imagine the number of my constituents who are unknowingly being poisoned by their gas stove.
Today's hearing is about much more than the game of golf. It's about how a brutal, repressive regime can buy influence, indeed, even take over a cherished American institution to cleanse its public image. It's a regime that has reportedly killed journalists, jailed and tortured dissidents, fostered the war in Yemen, and supported other terrorist activities, including the 9/11 attack on our nation.
Each witness, yes or no, is the possibility COVID-19 leaked from a lab a conspiracy theory? Dr.
Absolutely not.
No.
I would say no, but also it has been approached as such.
No.
Dr. Redfield, did you agree, in your opinion, with Dr. Anderson's assessment at the time that this virus did look engineered?
I was concerned because of the presence of the furin cleavage site that we've talked about. And I think it's important to understand what that cleavage site does. That cleavage site totally changes the orientation of the binding domain of COVID. So it now, which could not see the ACE2 receptor, which is the human receptor, it totally changes the orientation now, so it has high affinity for a human receptor. So that furin cleavage site bothered me. It didn't seem that it belonged there. And then when you look at the sequences that it used, and it's beyond the committee, but I know many of you have looked into it, the sequences that they used in those 12 nucleotides for arginine were the arginine sequences, nucleotide triplet, that coded for the human arginine. So why did this virus have the arginine sequences for human there, not bat? It was very disconcerting to me. It looked like this virus was engineered.
Was this, what you're observing and speaking of, is this something that would be in line with gain-of-function research and the capabilities it would provide to the virus?
Yeah, I mean, basically this lab published in 2014 that they accomplished in this, allowing the coronaviruses that they were working with in the lab to bind to the ACE2 receptor in humanized mice. And the only way they did that was by reorienting the binding domain.
What we found in the files was a sweeping effort to reverse that promise and use machine learning and other tools to turn the internet into an instrument of censorship and social control.
The ranking member of the Committee on the Weaponization of Government is asking for your sources.
If I never asked them for their sources.
Yes,
I did not. Who gave you access to these emails? Who was the individual that gave you permission to access the emails?
Well, the attribution from my story is sources at Twitter, and that's what I'm going to refer to.
Okay. Did Mr. Musk contact you, Mr. Taibbi?
Again, the attribution from my story is sources at Twitter.
So you're not going to tell us when Musk first approached you?
Again, Congressman, you're asking me to you're asking a journalist to reveal a source.
So then you consider Mr. Musk to be the direct source of all this?
No, now you're trying to get me to say that he is the source.
Gentlelady's out of order. You don't get to speak.
She's out of order because
not
he's
recognized.
interrupted.
Gentlelady's not
Chairman,
recognized.
you're not recognized.
He has not said that. What he has said is he's not going to reveal his source, and the fact that Democrats are pressuring him to do so is such a violation.
We're asking him about his conversation.
Aha! People. Ordinary people.
Hard drives can be manipulated by Rudy Giuliani or Russia.
I'd like all of you to think of me as a time traveler.
An anti-Semitic great replacement theory allow rape and murder to be live streamed by terrorists on their platforms.
Is that a threat? That's a problem.
I can't. Well, then it was flagged for a reason.
It gave me the creeps just reading about it.
Depends on whether you're spreading inaccurate information.
That's the threat. There's been a dramatic shift in attitudes about speech in this country, and many politicians now clearly believe the bulk of Americans can't be trusted to digest information on their own. Having come to this conclusion, the government agencies like the DHS and the FBI and the quasi-private agencies who do anti-disinformation work have taken upon themselves the paternalistic responsibility to sort out for us what is and is not safe. While they see great danger in allowing others to read controversial material, it's taken for granted that they themselves will be immune to the dangers of speech.
Mismanagement, was that really clouded by greed? Or just incompetent? They're just, were they just incompetent? Like I thought these were high achieving, executives and successful banks. And were they? Do you think they could? It wasn't greed, or did they not? Did they think theoretically that they're like, we can really crash really good because they're going to come cleaning up our mess here, kind of a thing? Because that to me is. What do you think? Like, because I don't think an average human being, in our nation, wouldn't just say, hey, you know what? I'm going to run up too much debt. I'm going to come by bankruptcy. I'm going to get paid it off, kind of a thing. So, do you think anything that's not part of it? This idea that we're going to clean up my mess.
Senator, I believe that mismanagement is the problem, but you're talking about the motives for mismanagement.
You have no idea. You know hard drives can be manipulated.
Are you suggesting the New York Post could participate in a conspiracy to construct the contents of the Hunter Biden laptop?
No, sir. The problem is that hard drives can be manipulated by Rudy Giuliani or Russia.
Well, what's the evidence that happened?
Well, there is actual evidence of it, but the point is it's not the same thing.
There's no evidence for it, so you're engaging in a conspiracy. The FBI made the social media platforms pull that information off the internet if it came from conservative sources. They did this under the guise that it was disinformation. Can you define what disinformation is?
What I can tell you is that our focus is not on disinformation, broadly speaking.
Well, wait a minute. Yes, it is. Wait a minute.
Can I answer the question?
You can in a minute. Your star witness said in the litigation, Elvis Chan, who's in charge of this, said they do it on the basis of disinformation. We need a definition of what that is.
Our focus is on malign foreign disinformation, that is foreign hostile actors who engage in covert efforts to abuse our social media platforms, which is something that is not seriously in dispute.
I have to stop you for time. That's not accurate. You need to read this court opinion because you're in charge of enforcing it.
Ms. Troy, is there any reason you think that this should have been flagged?
Depends on whether you're spreading inaccurate information.
Well, it references a study from Israel, a published study from Israel, and the tweet just restates the title of the study. Does it trouble you that
companies to review their policies? It's an internal choice.
Yeah, are you going to sit here and maintain that it's a conspiracy theory that this occurred? We have the documents. Mr. Schellenberger has the documents that showed that this occurred.
Well, then it was flagged for a reason.
What's the reason? Is there ever a good reason to censor a member of Congress? This is my official account. This is not a personal account. This is not a campaign account. This is my communication with my constituents. By the way, I bring this up not to claim that members of Congress have more right to free speech than the general public. In fact, I don't even think the press or the media has more rights to the First Amendment than the general public. The general public has the same rights that we have. And I bring this up to show, number one, that your testimony is false. But number two, if they can do this to a member of Congress's official account, they can do it to anybody.
Electric vehicles and renewables are heavily dependent on critical minerals, correct?
Yes.
China accounts for 63% of the world's rare earth mining, correct?
I don't know that particular.
Will you stipulate that China is the majority of rare earth elements, or they control the mining of rare earth elements to a great majority?
I don't know what the percentage of what China produces.
All right, well, I'm telling you right now, it's 63% of rare earth mining will stipulate to it. Okay. By deductive reasoning, that would mean that electric vehicles and renewables deepen our reliance on China, correct?
Yes. Okay.
Knowing this, your department blocked critical minerals in Rapid Creek watershed, correct?
Okay.
They did, correct?
Okay.
I mean, it's your department,
Okay.
and you banned critical mineral mining. Okay, would you also agree that your department also banned it in northeast Minnesota?
Are you talking about the boundary
Critical mineral
wires?
mining
We-
in northeast Minnesota.
Well, we did a mineral withdrawal in the Boundary Waters
So
Conservation
yes, you
area.
banned it there.
I don't know what kind of minerals were there. I don't think they were critical minerals, though.
Okay, I can tell you there were critical minerals in northeast Minnesota.
Okay.
I'm the co-chair of the Critical Mineral Caucus.
Special Counsel Durham assessed that neither U.S. law enforcement nor the intelligence community appears to have possessed any actual evidence of collusion in their holdings at the commencement of the Crossfire Hurricane investigation, and that the Bureau subsequently discounted or willfully ignored material that did not support the narrative of a collusive relationship between Trump and Russia. As the Deputy Assistant Director for the FBI's Counterintelligence Division, are you familiar with this report?
I have not read that report, sir.
You have not read the Durham report.
I have not yet read the Durham report, no, sir.
I'm honestly speechless at this point in time. I'm not sure what to think of this as someone who has spent an entire career in counterintelligence. Special Counsel Durham found that the FBI moved too quickly with its investigation of the 2016 campaign and relied on uncorroborated evidence when launching its investigation. Does this concern you?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
That there was a very fast pace of the investigation and that uncorroborated evidence was used when launching the investigation. Does that concern you?
So again, sir, I haven't read the Durham report, so I'm not sure, you know, I have no knowledge of
Does this fall under the counterintelligence umbrella?
the Durham report. I'm sure portions of it do, yes, sir.
Does a suggestion or an accusation of election collusion between a foreign government and the United States or a person or an entity in the United States fall under counterintelligence?
Yes, sir.
So the alleged collusion between Mr. Trump in 2016 and Russia would have fallen under the counterintelligence division of the FBI?
Yes, sir.
And you have not read the Durham report?
I have not read the Durham report.
Is
no,
there
sir.
a reason? Is it not required to?
No, I just haven't had time.
Why do you think you were excluded from those calls?
Because it was told to me that they wanted a single narrative and that I obviously had a different point of view.
Okay. In emails following the conference call, 4 of the 11 scientists told Fauci that they all found the genetic sequence inconsistent with expectations from evolutionary theory, basically what you're saying. However, just 3 days later, these 4 scientists had drafted a paper arguing the exact opposite, and that's now the infamous proximal origin of SARS-CoV-2. Our investigations show that this paper was prompted by Dr. Fauci, among others, with a goal to disprove the lab leak theory. What is the likelihood that these scientists came across additional information just 3 days after making these statements to conclude with such certainty that COVID-19 came from nature instead of the lab leak that they thought it was 3 days earlier?
Yeah, I think it's unfortunate. Again, I've said this before, that this whole approach that was taken on February 1st and subsequently in the month of February, if you really want to be truthful, it's antithetical to science.
Today, Republicans are so afraid of democracy that they want to disenfranchise predominantly black voters who have been disenfranchised for as far back as when black people were enslaved in the United States of America. This has nothing to do with election integrity. This is about racial control, and this is not new.
D.C. Council Chairman Phil Mendelson said there is not a crime crisis in Washington, D.C. Do you agree with him?
Oxford defines a crisis as a time of intense difficulty, trouble, or danger. And so I would say that we find ourselves in an intense time of trouble or danger. So I would say there is a crisis.
So DC statehood is not about one party or the other. It's about freedom. And it's about political self-determination. It's about overcoming the white supremacist violence of voter suppression in this here historically black city.
From November 21st, have you read this?
No.
Well, do you think it would be problematic if X leaves up terrorist violence and propaganda in violation of the terms of service?
Terrorist violence or terrorist propaganda?
If it violates their terms of service, is it problematic?
Well, it depends on what the content is, but you know, they're a private company. They can do what they want with the content.
Aha! They're a private company and they can do what they want with the content. Do you think it's problematic that X would profit off of terrorist violence propaganda and content on their social media platform?
Well, first of all, just to go back to
No, just answer the question. I don't have time. Do you think it's problem if they profit off of it?
Well, if the company makes money doing what it does, I don't necessarily see a problem with that.
Okay, interesting.
And we know, after interviewing Laura Demlow, who at the time of the Hunter Biden laptop story was on the Foreign Influence Task Force, we have learned from her that she and others on that task force did in fact know about the laptop before the New York Post story broke, and they knew it was his. In other words, the work done in the years since the release of the Twitter files has continued to expose the extent of the censorship industrial complex.
One of the most important things that it shows is that the censorship is in service of disinformation. It wasn't that they prevented the New York Post from publishing. It wasn't even that they did, the tweet eventually did come back on Twitter, was eventually allowed. But the disinformation that was planted, that myself and all my family and friends believed, was that there was something fraudulent about the Hunter Biden laptop, which we now know was actually the Hunter Biden laptop. It's been verified now by all the major media and everybody else. But it created the perception that it was misinformation by the Russians. And of course, that conspiracy theory continues to be peddled today.
What do you think about the fact that the FBI agents warning Twitter about a hack and leak were the same agents who knew that of the existence and legitimacy of that laptop? What do you think about those people?
It's shocking. Like you said, I was trying to only report on what we knew at the time, but obviously when that came out, it's absolutely shocking that you would have the FBI sitting on this information in 2019 and then seeding the idea that there would be a hack and leak coming. It wasn't just Aspen Institute, it was also Stanford came out, and they used that as a pretext to attack the Pentagon Papers principle upheld by the Supreme Court that when journalists like us are leaked information, we can publish it and we're protected by the First Amendment.
An anti-Semitic great replacement theory was recently amplified on Twitter/X by none other than its owner, Elon Musk, and the right-wing darling, Tucker Carlson. Terrorists use the platforms to terrorize target populations, and Hamas even used the personal accounts of hostages and victims to live stream their brutality to incite further violence. Mr. Taibbi, yes or no? Should social media companies allow rape and murder to be live streamed by terrorists on their platforms in order to create fear and incite violence?
I believe that would violate their terms of service, would it not?
So your answer is no? It should not. They should not be allowed to do that.
Live stream rape and murder? No,
Right.
I think that would count as speech that would be prohibited under their terms of service.
Good. You do have absolutist policies, but
I do not have absolute. I do not have.
Please don't interrupt me. You have absolute. I've asked your question. You answered it. You do have absolutist policies. At least they have some limits. But I think a Homeland Security official.
With respect, Congresswoman, all journalists operate
reclaiming my time.
Matters first. I wanted to introduce into the record page 55 from the committee's interview with FBI employee Laura Demlow, who you just spoke about, which took place on July 17, 2023. In that line, she says, the question was asked, okay, if someone were to leave here today, were to leave this interview and were to suggest or imply that when you said the laptop was real, that it meant that the FBI had affirmatively determined in October 2020 that the laptop belonged to Hunter Biden, that the contents belonged to Hunter Biden, and that the contents had not been manipulated in some way, would they be representing what you said, correct? Answer by Ms. Demlow. They would be representing what I said because I don't have much knowledge of that. They would be misrepresenting what I said because I don't have much knowledge of that. Because this committee likes to misrepresent or leave off complete sentences of what individuals said, I'd like to introduce this into the record.
I regret that this committee continues to hold hearings on things that do not exist, like a bogus ban on gas stoves, while ignoring the real economic and energy issues affecting people across this country. Could it be that this is part of an effort by my colleagues on the other side of the aisle to distract from the numerous wins of the Biden administration?
Women and some that are shorter. You don't believe that a biological male has a physical advantage in sports over a biological female?
Not as a definitive statement.
Give me an example. Well, no, I don't think. How many female members of the NBA do you see?
Well, I can say that, there's been this news article about men that think that they could beat Serena Williams in tennis, right? That they think that they could actually score a point on her. And it's just not the case. She is stronger than that.
What's your experience, Ben? Male, female?
Both Serena and Venus lost to the 203rd ranked male tennis player, which they're phenoms for women.
It's very difficult to sit here and listen to arguments in the long history of this country of using scripture and weaponizing and abusing scripture to justify bigotry. White supremacists have done it. Those who justified slavery did it. Those who fought against integration did it. And we're seeing it today. And sometimes, especially in this body, I feel as though if Christ himself walked through these doors and said what he said thousands of years ago, that we should love our neighbor and our enemy, that we should welcome the stranger, fight for the least of us, that it is easier for a rich man, it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to get into a kingdom of heaven, he would be maligned as a radical and rejected from these doors.
You also plan to make important investments to address the roadway safety crisis, including the critical funding that would accelerate the development, and this is an area I've written to you about, of the use of female dummies in crash testing. This will start to fight the gender inequity among vehicle safety and crash victims.
So call us woke, but that seems like transphobia. Did it never occur to Congresswoman DeLore you could just put lipstick on the male dummies and have them identify as female? Trans female dummies are trans females.
The FBI opened up Crossfire Hurricane without speaking to the people who provided the initial information. Is that true?
That's correct.
The FBI opened Crossfire Hurricane on a Sunday, only 3 days after reviewing that information. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Mr. Durham, the FBI opened Crossfire Hurricane without interviewing any of the essential witnesses. Is that true?
That's true.
And the FBI also opened up Crossfire Hurricane without using any of the standard analytical tools typically employed to evaluate that evidence. Is that true?
That's true.
Mr. Durham, if the FBI had done these things, if they had done their homework, would it have found that its own Russian experts had no information about President Trump being involved with Russian leadership or Russian intelligence officials?
Yes.
And let's take a step back for a minute. In the chaos created by all these conspiracy theories and other propaganda amplified by right-wing hate machine, the one we continue to hear, a very simple point is getting lost. Republicans will do anything, say anything, and spend any amount of money to hide the basic truth that their leader is a criminal, corrupt, narcissistic buffoon. That's why we're still talking about Carter Page. That's why anyone even knows who John Durham is.
So Danchenko is the primary subsource. A few years before he does this work, he was investigated by the FBI for espionage. Is that right, Mr. Durham?
Correct.
And that case was halted because the FBI thought he left the country, right?
Correct.
Had he left the country?
No.
Where was he living?
He remained living in the place that he was living when they opened the investigation.
Right here in D.C., right?
Yeah.
He hadn't left anywhere. He's right here in D.C., and we're going to stop this. And then they go hire him, use the tax money of the people I get the privilege of representing to pay this guy who they obviously knew was a Russian spy. They hire him, who's the source of all the false information. Is that true?
They paid him, they hired him, and they paid him.
Couple $100,000 if I recall, right?
It's over $200,000.
Yeah, and then this guy's hanging out with Dolan, Charles Dolan, who's a buddy of the Clintons, who's also a source for the false dossier that was used to spy on an American citizen. He's hanging out with Dolan. In fact, don't they meet on a park bench somewhere in Arlington, Virginia on New Year's Day?
New Year's Day, middle of the day.
I mean, this is straight out of the movies, right? And the FBI says, but we're not going to talk to Charles Dolan. I mean, this is two of the dumbest things I've ever heard of.
Dossier come from President Trump's political opponents.
It was funded by the Clinton campaign and the DNC. So in that degree, yes, it came That's how it was paid for.
Ms. Bradford, in your testimony, did I understand you right? Said that you want to end all plastic manufacturing?
I said the plastics industry must be stopped.
So does that mean end plastic manufacturing?
I mean, in my dream world, sure, but I think that, go ahead.
No, so I don't mean to be condescending here. I just point out, what's going to replace your glasses? Like,
So
how
I
would you wear
do
your
know,
glasses around your face? They're made of plastic.
maybe.
No,
I don't know what they're made out of.
They are. What
So-
about, and I just point out some things here, because I just want to be realistic when we're having conversations, because when statements are made like this, I just want to open people's eyes and say, well, okay, that's easy to say, but what's the solution? Your water bottle in front of you.
This one?
Yes. That plastic?
No.
The lid is. That's plastic.
Right. So
Right.
I would say to your
cell phone-
question that I would first be concerned about single-use plastics, and then we can talk about alternatives to this.
Your cell phone there. Is it plastic?
The cases, but it's glass because I broke
Oh, the components
the
inside of it's
screen
not
yesterday.
plastic? The components made out of it's not plastic? Yeah, they are. The water that you filled that water bottle up with, where'd you fill that water bottle up out of?
A water filling station.
All right, and it was delivered by a drink station that was plastic?
I didn't check.
The edges are. The piping coming to it. Now, you have a couple choices with the piping. We could go back to using wood, but then you have to line it in chemical. Or we could go back and use lead, because we used to have water piping that was lead. That was harmful to us. We go back to galvanized, but galvanized rust and had discoloration. We go back to copper, but copper has to be mined, and everybody wants to stop mining in the U.S. So you use plastic to deliver piping that you fill that water bottle up with today. I point this out because the clothes you have on, I guarantee you have plastic in it. The shoes you have on your feet, the soles of those shoes are plastic. So we talk about any plastic manufacturing, and everybody in here cheers when you say that, but everybody here is depending on plastic as you set. So if you want to end it, then quit using it. It's kind of like, I don't shop at certain places right now because I don't agree with some of their policies. I choose not to do that. You can choose to not use plastic. Do your work. If you believe it, then live it that way. And if not, then tell me what the solution is.
Woo, you just got schooled, son. What we're about to see this committee do is vote on several nominees who are so extreme, who are so unqualified, that they could not have a prayer of getting even a single Republican vote on this committee. And as everyone knows, Senator Graham votes for most of Biden's nominees. It is unusual that Senator Graham does not give a Republican vote to a Biden nominee. But there's a small subset of these nominees that are so beyond the pale that they have no prayer of getting a Republican nominee. This first nominee, Charnel Beckelgren, is so amazingly unqualified, she may well have the title for the least qualified nominee I've seen in 11 years serving on this committee. When Senator Kennedy asked her what Article 5 of the Constitution was, she had no idea.
Judge on the far end. Tell me what Article 5 of the Constitution does.
Article 5 is not coming to mind at the moment.
When Senator Kennedy asked her what Article 2 of the Constitution was, she said, I don't know.
Okay. How about Article 2?
Neither is Article 2.
Okay.
Mind you, Article 2 is the provision of the Constitution that creates the president and the executive branch of the government. Any first-year law student that didn't know what Article 2 of the Constitution was would flunk con law. This is not some obscure question about some Latin phrase no one should know. This is literally the basic architecture of our Constitution. By the way, Joe Biden has nominated her to be an Article 3 judge. Article 3 is right after Article 2. It creates the federal judiciary. I assume she doesn't know what that is either. To give you a sense of how unqualified this nominee is, she listed in her judiciary questionnaire her top 10 litigated cases. And I just want you to pause and read this for a second. Her top 10, she did a driver's license revocation. She did a second driver's license revocation. She did an unemployment benefits appeal. She did another unemployment benefits case. She did another unemployment benefit case. And her sixth case was an unemployment benefits case where on the opposing side was a pro se litigant. In other words, this poor fella didn't have a lawyer. And you know what? The pro se litigant beat her. She lost to a pro se litigant. What's her seventh most consequential case? I'm sorry, there isn't one. There's not an eighth, there's not a ninth, there's not a 10th. She's argued over a couple of driver's licenses, and the Biden White House says you should be a federal judge, an Article 3 judge, not that you have any idea what in the hell that is. She's not the only one. Another one being considered, a nominee, Cato Cruz. Thankfully not spelled C-R-U-Z, spelled C-R-E-W-S. When asked about Brady versus Maryland, one of the foundational criminal law classes, again, first-year criminal law, you learn about Brady. She said, I'm sorry, I don't know what Brady is.
Tell me how you analyze a Brady motion.
How I analyze a Brady motion?
Yes.
Senator, in my 4.5 years on the bench, don't believe I've had the occasion to address a Brady motion in my career.
Do you know what a Brady motion is?
One of the things that we demand and we're entitled to receive from a law enforcement agency and from the DA's office by extension is anything that is considered exculpatory or mitigating. So that it comes about as a result of a Supreme Court case from 1963, Brady versus Maryland, which had the holding in it that it's a due process violation for a defendant to not be provided with all evidence, not just the evidence that the prosecution thinks is important.
Senator, in my time on the bench, I've not had occasion to address that, and so it's not coming to mind at the moment what a Brady motion is.
Do you recall the U.S. Supreme Court case, Brady v. Maryland?
I do recall the name of the case, the Senator, yes.
And what did it hold?
I believe that the Brady case, Senator, I believe the Brady case involves something regarding the Second Amendment. It is not. I've not had occasion to address that. If that issue were to come before me, I would certainly analyze that Supreme Court precedent and apply it.
There are a number of members of this committee who have tried criminal cases. Do you know what Brady is? Of course you do. Because if you're remotely competent, you know what it is, not this judge. I want to end with one more nominee that we're getting ready to ram through on party line votes. That is Judge Marian Gaston, nominated for a seat in San Diego. Judge Gaston, look, we've seen some radicals. We had a nominee earlier that this committee rubber stamped who said he woke up every morning motivated by his hatred for conservatives. But you also wrote in November 2017, quote, in these dark times, I've been fortunate to find tremendous sense of purpose in my work as a civil rights lawyer. But as a colleague of mine asked me over lunch recently, Dale, do you do this because you want to help people or because you hate conservatives? What he was getting at is that anger can in fact be a tremendous source of power. For me, righteous indignation can provide a sense of moral clarity and motivate the long hours needed to get the work done. But it's only a short-term burst. It's not sustaining in the long run. Mr. Ho, if you wake up and are Judge Ho, and I recognize that New York is a blue state, but imagine there is someone who considers himself or herself a conservative in the state of New York, who, God forbid, finds themselves in a courtroom where you're wearing a robe. What comfort do you think that litigant would have that you described the hatred of conservatives, the righteous indignation, the anger at conservatives as a tremendous source of power for you personally? How does that possibly give anyone comfort that you would be a fair and impartial judge?
Thank you, Senator Cruz, for giving me an opportunity to address this. As I mentioned to some other members of the committee, this was a comment that I made in church where I was relaying a joke that someone else had told, the point of which was that that kind of temporary sugar rush from being angry at someone, while it can feel powerful in a moment, it's not the kind of thing that is sustaining for a human being in the long run. That at the end of the day, if you want to do good work in the world, it has to come from a different place, a place of love for your fellow person. And that's what I was trying to convey to my fellow congregants at my church.
Well, that's not what you said. Senate Democrat says, sounds like a judge to me. But let's see just how moonbat crazy we're willing to put on the bench. Here's a quote from Judge Gaston. Children are not safer because registered sex offenders are prohibited from residing near schools, parks, daycare centers, and other places where children tend to gather. And in fact, Judge Gaston continued, let's go to the next one. Judge Gaston continued, the conclusions and recommendations are that, difficult as it might be, so at least Judge Gaston recognizes this is pretty wingnut, the conclusion, laws that regulate where sex offenders may not live should be repealed or substantially modified in the interest of public safety.
Can you tell me what the independent state legislature theory is? I'm just asking you, not your opinion of what is it? It's before the Supreme Court now.
In my 12 years as a Washington State Assistant Attorney General, and that particular doctrine was not presented to me.
My experience, my husband, he swam at University of Kentucky as well. In terms of accolades and in terms of national ranking, I was a much better swimmer than him. He could kick my butt any day of the week without trying. You just admitted this is a male by acknowledging how you had to change your rules to make the locker rooms unisex. You acknowledge that we do not share the same sex, first and foremost. Secondly, unisex. Any man could have walked into our locker room, any coach, any official, any man who wanted to would have had full reins to, and bare minimum, we weren't forewarned about it. And that's the traumatizing part. Of course, the experience in and of the locker room itself is traumatizing, but I think for me, it was so easy for them to dismiss our rights to privacy.
That's the question. A lot of people have that concern that there's somehow now a genetic marker because of the vaccine. And I think the other thing is if you look in total, and I think the Operation Warp Speed, the idea that, look, we need to move with a sense of urgency, maybe not at the pace that government is historically not very effective at, seemed appealing up front, but now with the benefit of hindsight, could we assess that Warp Speed was successful or not?
In my opinion, what we've learned, remember it's now 4 years. In my opinion, what we've learned is that the collective wisdom of decades of regulatory science as it relates to vaccines and other medical products was appropriate. There is a reason why these products typically require up to a decade to be proven to be safe and effective. And it was not prudent and not in the interests of protecting the citizens of the United States or the world to bypass those time-tested processes that have basically been agreed upon through various forms of informal international treaties in order to, my words are, jam a product through a process in order to get it out to respond to a false threat. Remember, the underlying thesis here is that we had 3.4% case fatality rate. This was told to us again and again and again, and it was a lie.
Gentlemen, what an uncomfortable hearing, is it not? But let me say it's uncomfortable for the entire American citizenry to gaze upon this bizarre realm of D.C. and wonder how it operates when we're facing now $32 trillion in debt. We've added $1 trillion in 1 month, by the way. And the most ravenous leviathan of our government that devours the people's wealth is the Department of Defense, the Pentagon. What a culture we have allowed to become manifest in those halls of ultimate power and military might and expenditure of the people's treasure.
My first question is to Commissioner Weintraub. By statute, the commissioner serves in a seat with a revolving 6-year term, but may continue to serve past the term's expiration until he or she is replaced. You were first recess appointed to the FEC on December 9th, 2002, and later formally confirmed in 2003. Your term actually expired in 2007.
What?
You have served on the FEC for more than 20 years, 15 since your term expired. The next most senior commissioner is Commissioner Traynor, who was appointed in 2020. Commissioner Weintraub, let me ask you, the FEC is not meant to be a lifetime appointment. Why do you believe you're still on the commission?
Because I haven't been replaced.
Do you think we should be looking for a replacement now?
I believe that is a decision for the president.
Are you ready for the president to nominate someone to replace you?
That decision is out of my hands. If I am replaced, I will obviously leave. But the commission, as we have noted earlier, has been through several periods where we ran out of commissioners. We lost the quorum. So I am legally there until I get replaced.
Why do you think that the quorum was lost?
Because commissioners left and were not replaced.
Excuse me, point of order. I know that witnesses usually have 5 minutes. I see 10 minutes on the board. Is it going to be 10 minutes
We'll
for
give him
every
5
witness?
minutes, but we're pretty lax with this. We'll let him go for
We are?
a little, yeah.
I've seen you gavel down on quite a number of
We've
witnesses.
given senators and former Democrat members of Congress and all kinds
He's
of folks
neither.
plenty of time. I
He's
know.
neither.
I'm just saying in past history.
Okay,
in
okay.
committee. But
Let's just
we'll
watch
give you,
the time for all the witnesses.
and if
then.
you want to cut him off and censor him some more, you're welcome to do it.
Oh, that's not my job. That's your job. Why don't you threaten a witness so that they can not want to be a
Mr.
witness?
Kennedy is recognized for his opening statement. We'll give him 5 minutes, more or less, and then we'll move to the next one.
And by the way, I want to say this while I'm on the record, that in my entire life, and why I'm under oath, in my entire life, I have never uttered a phrase that was either racist or anti-Semitic. I know many of the people who wrote this letter. I don't believe there's a single person who signed this letter who believes I'm anti-Semitic. I do not believe that. There is no evidence of that. Now, I want to say something I think that's more important, and it goes directly to what you talked about, ranking member, which is the need, this toxic polarization that is destroying our country today. And how do we deal with that? This kind of division is more dangerous for our country than any time since the American Civil War.
Point of order, pursuant to House Rule 11, Clause 2, which Mr. Kennedy is violative of, I move that we move into executive session because Mr. Kennedy has repeatedly made despicable anti-Semitic and anti-Asian comments as recently as last week. Rule 11, Clause 2 says, whenever it is asserted by a member of the committee that the evidence or testimony at a hearing may tend to defame, degrade, or incriminate any person, or it is asserted by a witness that the evidence or testimony that the witness would give at a hearing may tend to defame, degrade, or incriminate the witness, and it goes on.
Wow. The irony and cognitive dissonance from the other side of the aisle, it's deafening. You could cut it with a knife. They are at the same time denying that censorship is occurring, but suggesting that there's more material that needs to be censored. This is a hearing on censorship that began with an effort with a formal motion from the other side of the aisle to censor Mr. Kennedy.
2 months ago, Mr. Kennedy, you compared COVID public health policies to barbaric murderous tactics of Nazi Germany, saying that Jewish people in Nazi Germany had more freedom than Americans facing COVID health restrictions. In hindsight, Mr. Kennedy, do you reject this absurd and deeply hurtful and harmful comparison, or do you still stand by it?
Congressman, what you are saying is a lie.
That you said it.
I did not. I never contained.
Okay.
I never, ever
Mr. Chairman, I'm
compared
happy to
COVID
enter into the record when Mr.
countermeasures.
Kennedy said that. I reclaim my time. In discussing COVID public health measures, you made light of the genocide against Jewish people by saying, and I quote, even Hitler's Germany, you could cross the Alps to Switzerland, you could hide in an attic like Anne Frank did. Mr. Kennedy, do you think it was easy for Jewish people to escape systematic slaughter of Nazis, yes or no?
Absolutely not.
Okay, good. Mr. Kennedy, do you think it was just as hard to wear a mask during COVID as it was to hide under floorboards or false walls so you weren't murdered or dragged to a concentration camp? Yes or no?
Excuse me?
That's a question, yes or no?
I didn't hear your question.
Okay. I said, do you think it was just as hard to wear a mask during COVID as it was to hide under floorboards or false walls so you weren't murdered or dragged to a concentration camp?
Of course not. That's
Okay.
ridiculous.
But that's a comparison that you made.
I did
Mr.
not
Kennedy,
make that
were the measures taken to contain the spread and fatalities related to COVID in any way at all comparable to the murder of 6 million Jews, yes or no?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Mr. Secretary, is the number greater than 0? Can you tell us that? The number of people who've been encountered on the border, over the 2 million number, encountered on the border, put in removal proceedings, adjudicated, and then removed. Is that number greater than 0?
Yes.
Is it greater than 100?
Yes.
Greater than 1,000?
Congressman, Mr. Chairman, forgive me. Mr. Chairman, as I have stated before, the data that you wish to have, we will provide to you as promptly as possible. What I don't want to do is misspeak when it comes to data. I do not want to be
And I can appreciate that, but we have a history where we've asked questions before in a hearing. You told us the same thing and you don't get it back to us. So we're trying to get as much as we can on the record in a public hearing.
I've only got 25 seconds. I'll just say I don't have time for a question because you'll be elusive. But I just, for the record, since we're stating things for the record, I've been in Congress 7 years. I think you're the most dishonest witness that has ever appeared before the Judiciary Committee. And I think I speak for a lot of my colleagues. This is such a frustrating exercise for us because our constituents want answers. They're tired of the open border. They're tired of people dying from fentanyl overdoses, and it's your fault. It's my time.
Mr. Chairman, point of order.
No, there's no point of order in the middle of this. This is my opinion. I think it's shared by millions of American
based
people.
on the
You
standard.
show no shame.
Chairman, this is based on the standard that the chairman set out in previous hearings. Calling a witness dishonest is over the line that you drew at a previous hearing.
I'm not pulling the words down. That speaks for the American people.
We are a nation of immigrants, but we are also a nation of laws. You, sir, have betrayed constitutional order, neglected your duty, and violated the trust of the American people. And as a nation of laws, I look forward to your impeachment.
Finding, but I've been at the border and you've been at the border too. How would you grade your job? On a scale of 0 to 10, how would you grade yourself?
Congresswoman, I am immensely proud to
How would you grade yourself?
Congresswoman, I am immensely proud to work with the men and women of the Department of Homeland
No, yourself, your job, not all of the women. I'm sure there are a lot of great men and women in your department. How would you rate your job as a head of your agency?
It is the honor of my
From
life.
0 to 10, so you cannot grade it. How would grade your preparedness to this committee meeting on scale from 0 to 10? We ask information, you all these promises, letter. I'm not wasting my time. I'm sorry, I don't want to use bad word, what you can do with all these letters because we keep giving money and sending letter and you tell us BS back.
When you say I'm anti-woke, when you talk about wokeness, you're saying I'm anti-black and I don't want black people to speak up for themselves. I don't want equality and justice for black folks. So whatever else is being thrown around, unless you are saying I'm racist, white supremacist, and I'm bigoted, stop talking about wokeness. And you can't tell me that I'm wrong because I'm from the very movement where this came about. Don't let a fascist tell you what being woke means.
The hateful, divisive rhetoric is historical as per redlining, and the anti-immigrant sentiment is directly connected to the Great Replacement theory. Now, I know none of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle will admit to being racist. And I don't think they are. But when you look at the rhetoric and you hear the talking points and look at the legislation that's put forward, what are we to say?
The gentleman will suspend.
Mr. Tenaglia.
Enablers for 300.
Pardon me?
Enablers for 300.
Enablers for 300. Individuals who get rich while pushing to overspend our tax dollars.
I don't know.
Who are defense lobbyists? Mr. Mansfield.
Waste for 200.
Waste for 200. I'm really counting on you here, Mr. Mansfield. A program that is $183 billion over budget and 10 years behind schedule.
What is the Joint Strike Fighter Program?
What is the what?
Is it the Joint Strike Fighter Program?
What? That's correct. What is the F-35 program? Correct. Mr. Khan.
Missing guardrails for 200.
Missing guardrails for 200. The institution that has authorized more defense spending than the president requested for the current fiscal year. Who has authorized more defense spending than the president requested for this current 2023 fiscal year?
I would say it's the Armed Services Committee.
We'll give you that. Who is? Congress. Mr. Tenaglia, I'd really love to see you get one right here. I'm rooting for you.
Missing guardrails for 100.
Missing guardrails for 100. This one I think you're going to know. A review that every agency has passed except the DOD.
What is an audit?
What is an audit? Correct.
Assistant Secretary, I'm going to ask you some very straightforward questions. I would say it's in everybody's best interest to give us simple and straightforward answers. It's an opportunity to clear the air on some ongoing issues. There is currently an allegation that your Chief of Staff, who was also a former aide for Robert Malley, an Iran deal architect, who is currently has a revoked security clearance and is suspended for classified mishandling, allegedly, that she was a part of a group known as the Iran Expert Initiative, which reported to the Iranian Foreign Ministry and had the mission of influencing U.S. policymakers to agree with what the Iranian government wanted. That is an allegation. The Pentagon issued a defense saying that the doctor was thoroughly and properly vetted and that we are honored to have her serve. I like to believe that in issuing a defense, that was thoughtful and thoroughly vetted as well, and I want you to give you the opportunity to substantiate that. So my questions are going to start with this. They will be very straightforward. Given that a defense was issued, I want to confirm what was reviewed to substantiate that defense. Did your Chief of Staff have any affiliation with a group known as the Iranian Expert Initiative, its other reported associates, or any groups reporting to the Iranian Foreign Ministry?
So, Congressman Mast, I think you'll appreciate this is an ongoing personnel matter. We received the letter from the House Armed Services Committee Chairman and Ranking Member, Subcommittee Chair of the Intelligence Special Operations Committee 2 days ago, so we're looking into that. I think the initial response you're referring to was issued by our public affairs folks. We are actively looking into whether all law and policy was properly followed in granting my Chief of Staff top secret, special compartmented information.
When was your first conversation with Dr. Fauci about the origins of COVID-19?
I believe that was on the 31st of January 2020.
And yes or no, he suggested you write a paper during that conversation, correct?
Dr. Fauci suggested that I consider writing a paper specifically predicated on my initial hypothesis, which was that of a lab-associated virus, correct?
Then you had the February 1st conference call that had Dr. Fauci, Dr. Collins, and Dr. Farrar on it, correct?
There were several scientists, including those, yes.
Was Dr. Tabak also on that call?
I believe he was on the call. I'm unsure about that.
Did Dr. Fauci reiterate a suggestion to draft a paper on that call?
I don't believe that he directly suggested it, but there was support for us looking further into the origin of the pandemic, yes.
I wanted to ask Dr. Fauci, could you address these suggestions or concerns that this virus was somehow man-made, possibly came out of a laboratory in China? You studied this virus. What are the prospects of that?
There was a study recently that we can make available to you where a group of highly qualified evolutionary virologists looked at the sequences there and the sequences in bats as they evolve. And the mutations that it took to get to the point where it is now is totally consistent with a jump of a species from an animal to a human. So, I mean, the paper will be available. I don't have the authors right now, but we can make that available to you.
Do you still believe it came from nature, Dr. Gary, Dr. Anderson?
Yes, I do believe that the natural origin via the wildlife trade is the most likely origin based on all the science, all the data that we've analyzed.
Dr. Anderson?
I do. During fiscal year 21 and fiscal year 22, the NSF funded some 70 grants and 2 contracts, totaling over $45 million, focused on both the quote-unquote science of countering social media mis- and disinformation, as well as the development of digital tools to track and censor so-called mis- or disinformation. One of the projects was called Expert Voices Together, and it is, to quote the NSF, quote, creating a comprehensive system of care that addresses the harms journalists experience due to online harassment. Its mission, incredibly enough, is to, quote, support journalists in moments of crisis while helping the media industry build resilience long-term. In other words, taxpayer-funded therapy for left-wing journalists who find actual facts traumatizing. I'm sure people like Taylor Lorenz will be excited about that. But where on earth in the NSF's mandate is there a justification for these sorts of projects? And do you believe that venturing into such politicized topics undermines broader support for the NSF?
Senator, first of all, let me tell you that the reach, I hope that through the hearing today, you will get to see NSF's broad impact all across our nation through STEM talent development, through economic vibrancy that NSF makes possible, and yes, national security objectives also being fostered. I hope that the examples that I will give you, and in the answer, I'm not trying to package all of that, but I hope that that will come through very clearly. We're doing a lot of work about how to make sure that talent everywhere and innovation everywhere is energized.
Could you answer the question, though, that I asked?
Yes, I'm just going to come to that, Senator, because I just want to make sure that the NSF mission is, I just want to make sure that that is clearly understood also. I want to say one thing very categorically. NSF does not engage in censorship. We do not regulate any content and engage with anybody who also does so. But what we do is, how do the technologies operate and how are they being used, and provide the public and policymakers the information that they need so that you can make the informed decisions about needed regulations and guardrails.
What does climate change have to do with broadband?
Climate change has to do with everything. Tell me your exact question.
Well, I'll be happy to. You have climate change requirements, and that the NOFU states eligible entities must account not only for current climate-related risks, but also for how the frequency, severity, and nature of these extreme events may plausibly evolve as our climate continues to change over the coming decades. Can you tell me anywhere though, Madam Secretary, anywhere where Congress has put into law that you would require them to mitigate climate change? Can you point to that section?
Congress requires us to be good stewards of taxpayer money.
That's not my question.
To be accountable.
Where are you drawing that authority from?
We have to fund projects that will be successful. Otherwise, we'll waste money.
So I understand you might think it's important. I understand Joe Biden might think it's important. But Congress hasn't actually said that's a requirement.
But you want us to fund projects that will be successful. And if climate events prevent success...
How does deploying broadband in Branson, Missouri have anything to do with your climate agenda?
I'll give you a great example. Well, no, but for example, Senator, I talk to people all the time, including in rural places, who tell me that due to climate events, their current technology doesn't work. Like they don't have the internet when there's a storm. So climate very definitely affects the effectiveness of certain technology to provide the internet to people.
Yeah, I can tell you, having just been elected by a state with a large rural population, they're interested in their kids being able to access the internet for homework. Okay? They're not interested in your social experiments.
Did forcing 2-year-olds to wear masks save lives?
Do what now?
Did forcing 2-year-olds to wear masks save lives?
Making sure people wore masks when it was appropriate was essential to make sure that we were able to get out of this pandemic.
Sure, but that wasn't my question. Could you answer the question that I asked?
Which is?
Did forcing 2-year-olds to wear masks save lives?
And who did the forcing?
Well, your department, or the Head Start, which is under your department, had a mask mandate until late last year for 2-year-olds and above, even outdoors. So can you point to any public health benefit of that policy?
Right. We never forced anyone to do anything because we don't have the jurisdiction or authority to do that. What we did was provide guidance on what would be
Mr. Secretary, did Head Start have a mask mandate?
We provide a mask mandate, a requirement for jurisdictions that wish to receive money to provide particular services.
So Head Start did have a mask mandate for kids, yes?
We had a mask mandate for for agencies that wish to get federal dollars.
So that's a yes.
To
so can you point to any benefit,
that's not a yes to
any
your
public
question.
health benefit from that policy, whether it was recommended or enforced or forced, of requiring young children to wear masks?
Did families benefit from the policy of using all protection, all precautions to avoid
No, I'm not asking you to
contracting COVID?
rephrase my
Yes.
question as some abstract question that you'd rather answer. I'm asking that you, as the person who's the Secretary of Health and Human Services, right now, can you point to any evidence that there was a public health benefit to forcing young children to wear masks?
Well, the fact that today we are not losing lives the way we lost them when we first got into this pandemic.
And you think that's
is a
because we
clear
forced
sign.
2-year-olds to wear masks?
That's your interpretation. What I'm saying to you is that using good policies that give us the precautions to keep our families from contracting COVID are helping save lives.
I want to quote you.
Are there special agents from HSI at the border?
Senator, we have a number of priorities. We prioritize trafficking in children. We prioritize the fight against fentanyl. We prioritize.
Mr. Secretary, you're not answering my question. You're not answering my question. Are there HSI special agents who are currently at the border, having been pulled away from other cases? Yes or no?
Combating the fight against fentanyl, yes.
How many agents are currently at the border, having been pulled off of their other cases?
To fight the scourge of fentanyl, I'd be very pleased to provide you with that data.
That's not what the special agent is alleging. That's not what she said. She said that they're being taken off of fentanyl interdiction, off of child exploitation cases, off of their other investigations into criminals to make sandwiches. That's her quote. You're saying that this is a lie, that she's wrong?
Senator, we have a number of law enforcement priorities with the resources.
Is making sandwiches one of them?
We have, of course not, Senator. We accomplish a tremendous amount.
Is she wrong?
Because of the tremendous talent and dedication of our personnel, including Homeland Security
Making sandwiches for illegal immigrants. Is she wrong? This is one of your agents. Is she wrong? She says that there are 600 at least special agents pulled off of other cases, sent down to the border to babysit illegal immigrants. Is she wrong?
Senator, our personnel, we use our personnel to achieve the maximum law enforcement objective possible. That is what we do. And
So you're not going to deny it?
And I'm incredibly proud of what our people do
Well, this is
every
news.
single day.
This is news. Well, let me just point you to what else she posted on social media, where she drew attention to the fact that she is an immigration and asylum officer. Hashtag immigrants, hashtag asylum seekers, hashtag Palestine, hashtag refugees welcome. This is on her LinkedIn post where she has her professional affiliation posted. So I think the American people deserve to know, has she admitted, contrary to law, individuals who should not be in this country, or denied Jewish refugees whose genocide she's advocating asylum that they deserve?
Same answer.
You're not going to tell us what this person's done? Are you conducting a review of her cases at least?
Senator, as I have said over and over again, I cannot speak to an ongoing.
You said that you will not. I can't believe that you would come to this committee knowing this. You know about this. I've written to you about it. You know all about it. And you come here unwilling to answer and suggest that it is wrong of me to ask you the question. Quite frankly, Mr. Secretary, I think that your performance is despicable. And I think the fact that you are not willing to provide answers to this committee is absolutely atrocious.
Mr. Chairman, may I?
Like, if you'd like to have a minute to respond, you are welcome to.
I would, and I'm not sure I'll limit it to 60 seconds.
That's fine.
Number one, what I found despicable is the implication that this language, tremendously odious, actually it could be emblematic of the sentiments of the 260,000 men and women of the Department of Homeland Security. Number one. Number two, Senator Hawley takes an adversarial approach to me in this question, and perhaps he doesn't know my own background. Perhaps he does not know that I am the child of a Holocaust survivor. Perhaps he does not know that my mother lost almost all her family at the hands of the Nazis. And so I find his adversarial tone to be entirely misplaced. I find it to be disrespectful of me and my heritage, and I do not expect an apology, but I did want to say what I just articulated. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, can I just respond since he has referenced me personally?
Senator Hawley, we need to move on.
Is the FBI still meeting with social media companies?
We're having some interaction with social media companies, but all of those interactions have changed fundamentally in the wake of the court's rulings.
That's sort of an acknowledgement that perhaps you weren't just talking about national security, child pornography, and human trafficking, right? You had other areas of discussion that did involve constitutionally protected speech.
No, that's not an acknowledgement of
But
that.
then how did you change your behavior?
Out of an abundance of caution.
General, do we have too many white officers in the Air Force?
Senator, what I really look at is the quality of all the officers that we have, and we look at the aspect of everyone who's qualified, meets the qualifications, is promoted. And when
I would agree with you, but that answer is not consistent with your August 9th memo. In your August 9th memo, you said that you signed on to that there should be a reduction, essentially, of about 9% of the white officers. That's 5,400. We have 5,400, too many white officers. And this is the real impact, I think, of this desire of the administration. I'm saddened to see this in this memo, of this obsession with sort of race-based politics being interjected into our military. How did you come up with the percentage of 67.5% of the officers should be white? And how did you come up with 13% should be black? And how did you come up with 10% should be Asian? And how did you come up with 1.5% should be American Indian and Native Alaskan? How did you come up with 1% being Native Hawaiian or other Pacific Islander? And how did you come up with 15% of our officers should be Hispanic or Latino?
Senator, that is based on that memo is on application goals, not the actual makeup of the force. And those numbers are based on the demographics of the nation.
Okay, well, all right. There's 10% of our country is Asian American. So is that where you came up with it? Just a percentage of the population?
Essentially.
Because right now the actual percentage, I mean, this is where this is a ridiculous conversation, to be perfectly honest.
You've said that we've cherry-picked data. How do you mean how do you mean that?
So it is very unscientific and flawed to pick a single study or a single statistic and to discuss it in isolation.
Totally agree.
Medical experts are able to talk about all of the evidence as a whole.
Totally agree. So it's good to look at systematic reviews, right? That's the gold standard of evidence when you're trying to understand whether something works or whether it doesn't. So the British Journal of Medicine looked at 61 systematic reviews with the conclusion that, quote, there is great uncertainty about the effects of puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and surgeries in young people. The Journal of Endocrine Society came up with the same conclusion, even the American Academy of Pediatrics. They all cite the lack of evidence. And so here's the thing. If you're doing a therapy, and it's, temporary, whatever, fine, maybe let's try it, let's see if it works. But when you're talking about permanent physiological changes, do you not agree, just from an ethical standpoint, that you might want extremely strong evidence of the benefits? And there is no systematic review that states that there is strong evidence of benefits.
Sir, are you aware of how the quality evidence grading system works and how it's applied?
Yeah, we read through it. That's why I'm citing these journals. So which journal says something different? We should have that debate. Tell me a journal that has done systematic reviews that cites different evidence, that cites strong evidence for benefits of these therapies.
The standards of care were developed based on extensive.
You're not telling me any journal, you're not telling me any study. Don't say
That's not
standards
what
of care.
Yeah. So.
Tell me one.
The standards of care.
That's the standards of care.
Yes,
That's
standards of
not
care.
a journal, that's not a study. That's not an organization, that's not an institution. You're just saying words. Name one study. I'm out of time.
It's not that we're not stopping people from speaking. People can speak.
Why would the Republican leadership and the committee majority give a hearing and a platform to the witnesses today, specifically to Mr. Kennedy? Now, many of my Republican colleagues across the dais will rush to cover that they have Mr. Kennedy here because they want to protect his free speech, that they do not believe in American censorship. This is not the kind of free speech that I know of.
Let me ask you this. First of all, we have accusatory commentary of Soros DAs. Let us not put an individual that is not here, a contributing American, and jeopardize his life for always throwing his name out in the most ugliest way. I am offended by that. Mr. Soros does not deserve that. He is an American and a patriot, and he also comes from a minority community, one might say, and you create a dangerous situation. That's unfortunate.
I'm going to get into a topic which I know that's not going to be popular, but I think it's really important. Since taking office in January of 2021, Secretary Granholm has violated the Hatch Act multiple times. She's owned Proterra stock while her boss, President Biden, repeatedly promoted the company. We saw this huge payout. She admitted 3 months after she took office. Her husband owned Ford stock while she personally promoted the company's work with official resources, and she cashed in on millions of dollars after these illegal transactions and failure to disclose obvious conflicts were revealed. Do you believe that any Department of Energy or other federal employee violating this rule should resign or be removed from office for this position?
First of all, let me say that we take ethics.
That's a yes or no question. Do you think if someone violates the ethical laws set forth in this, that you said you signed a statement, an ethical statement that you would comply with the laws, do you think that a DOE employee or other federal employee who violates these laws should step down from that position? That's a yes or no? If they violate the ethics laws set forth,
I understand what you're trying to do here.
I'm
just
asking you a specific question. Okay, so you're not going to answer the question.
You have made a number of allegations that I feel I've put against me personally.
This is my time, Mr.
I know,
Chairman.
but you've made these out there, and I feel it is important to
Let me just tell you, this is what you did not answer the yes or no question. You obviously believe that it's okay to violate the ethics rules.
Of course, I do not believe it's
okay
to violate ethics laws, nor does anyone else in the Department of Energy.
This is my time. So what you're trying to say is afterwards, once I realized and I spoke to Congress that I was not telling the truth about what was happening, I went back and admitted, oh, I made a mistake. So admitting the truth after being caught lying doesn't actually cure perjury. I don't know if you know that legally. I know you're an attorney. So you've admitted to testifying falsely and then came back and said, I corrected it later, but that doesn't cure the fact that you actually committed perjury.
Shaw, can I just follow up? I didn't understand your answer to the ranking member or to the chairman. Did you say, so you do attend dinners with industry leaders where they pay to see you speak? Was that a yes or a no? I didn't hear.
No, I attend many events, some of which I'm invited to speak at.
And they don't pay. They don't pay.
And many don't pay, and some are like paid conferences and others. But one of the things.
I'm sorry. Wait. That was a yes and a no. So let's just go back. Do you attend events where people pay to see you speak?
I have attended where people pay to attend the event.
Do you think that's a good idea?
I think it's important for us to meet potential applicants, American innovators and entrepreneurs who want to scale up their technology.
Applicants for loan programs?
Applicants for DOE funding.
Wait a minute. You think it's a good idea to go to events where people are trying to get federal money and they're paying to see you?
They're not paying to see me.
I thought you just said you spoke at events where people paid.
Not to see me. I mean, I'm not that important.
You're the... Wow. You learn new things every day. What's your title? You're the director of what?
Of the Loan Programs Office.
You're the director of the loan programs for the federal government, Department of Energy. People who want to get loans from the government are paying to see you, and you think that that's fine? That's not a rhetorical question.
I think I've answered that I go to many conferences and events. I've had hundreds of stakeholder events. The goal is to get people.
You're going to events where people are paying to see you who want money from the government. You're the director of the loan program.
Why do you think you're across the military having so many recruiting issues?
Yeah, so as you said, we share this challenge with the other military services. COVID had a huge impact on things, and it wasn't really until COVID hit that we saw this dip in recruiting and retention for whatever reason. I think, and a lot of this would just be supposition, so I have to be careful, but I think it's set us back in terms of individuals wanting to get out there, serving their country, do something that's really challenging. And I think in the Coast Guard, what we suffer from most is exposure. People don't necessarily know who we are.
So, Mr. Washington, can you quickly tell me what airspace requires an ADS-B transponder?
Not sure I can answer that question right now.
That's okay. We'll just keep going. So that's a pretty important part. So what are the 6 types of special use airspace that protect this national security that appear on FAA charts?
Sorry, Senator, I cannot answer that question.
Okay, so what are the operational limitations of a pilot flying under basic med?
Senator, I'm not a pilot, so...
but obviously you'd oversee the Federal Aviation Administration, so any idea what those restrictions are under basic med, quickly?
Well, some of the restrictions I think would be high blood pressure. Some of them would be...
It's more like how many passengers per airplane, how many pounds in different categories, and what altitude you can fly under. So, and then amount of knots. It's under 250 knots. So, it's not having anything to do with blood pressure. So, can you tell me what causes an aircraft to spin or to stall?
Again, Senator, I'm not a pilot.
Okay, let's keep going. What are the 3 aircraft certifications the FAA requires as part of the manufacturing process? Quickly, please. 3 aircraft certifications.
Again, what I would say to that is that one of my first priorities would be to fully implement that Certification Act and report back.
You know the 3 types, Mr. Washington? The 3 types? Okay. Yeah, that's type certificate, production certificate, and airworthiness certificate. Okay, all right. Let's just keep going, see if we can get lucky here. So can you tell me what the minimum separation distance is for landing and departing airliners during the daytime, Mr. Washington?
I don't want to guess on that, Senator.
Are you familiar with the difference between Part 107 and Part 44809 when it comes to unmanned aerial standards? Unmanned, like drones, are you familiar with the difference?
Yes.
Okay, you know the difference between those two, Part 44809 and Part 107? Do you know the difference there?
No, I cannot.
That's okay.
Do you have any experience?
No, sir, I have no experience, but I'm a big fan of money. I like it. I use it. I have a little. I keep it in a jar on top of my refrigerator. I'd like to put more in that jar. That's where you come in.
Ms. Johnson, I just have a real quick question for you. Do you believe it is censorship to prohibit teachers from exposing first graders to Penthouse magazine?
Do I believe it is I'm sorry, ma'am. Do I believe it is censorship to...
Do you believe it is censorship to prohibit teachers from exposing first graders to Penthouse magazine?
I don't know of any instances in which a...
That isn't my question. My question is, do you believe that it is censorship to prohibit teachers from exposing first graders to Penthouse magazine?
I believe that it is important that we have parents, teachers, and educators...
You are not going to answer my question then, is that right?
I believe it is important to have parents, teachers, and educators involved in understanding what is being presented to students.
Do you believe that
and
it is
there
appropriate to present Penthouse to first graders?
Answer.
Of course not.
Thank you.
Has your department been processing and responding to these requests?
Absolutely.
Okay.
The Department of Education is committed to being very clear and providing information with oversight. We take that very seriously.
We just
We're
don't
very
take the
responsive.
timeline seriously.
We've provided over 2,400 pages of documents in this Congress alone. We've responded to 45 letters this Congress alone, and we're going to continue to take that very seriously.
How many
because
employees do you
oversight
have
is
in the
important.
department? How many employees do you have in your department, and what's your budget?
Roughly under 4,000.
Under 4, okay. Okay. So I'm going to take that as a yes, you have been processing and responding to these FOIA requests?
We take that very seriously, and we have
That's a
been.
great answer to a question I didn't ask. So can we just stick with the question? Yes or no? I mean, we learned that early in education. Has your department been processing and responding to the FOIA requests? Yes, they have. No, they haven't. I'll even accept an I don't know.
Yeah, we take FOIA requests very seriously, and we have been responding.
So yes.
We take FOIA requests very seriously, and we have been responding.
What color's your suit?
I'd be happy to focus on our budget.
Respect for the secretary.
I'm just trying to figure out if we can answer a question.
Secretary Kerry, thank you so much for coming here. I hope it wasn't too problematic for your operational team and your private jet to get here.
I just don't agree with your facts, which began with the presentation of one of the most outrageously persistent lies that I hear, which is this private jet. We don't own a private jet. I don't own a private jet. I personally have never owned a private jet. And obviously, it's pretty stupid to talk about coming in a private jet from the State Department up here. It just, honestly, if that's where you want to go there.
In exchange with Mr. Mills, you just testified under oath that you never owned a private jet. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to enter into the record an article here from February 15th of 2023 that the John Kerry family private jet was sold shortly after accusations of climate hypocrisy. Mr. Secretary, do you stand by that testimony that you've never owned or
I personally,
your family? By your family?
Personally, yes. My wife owned a plane and she sold the plane.
You flew on that plane?
Not in a number of years, but I have flown on it,
and
sure.
This article is not then inaccurate, that your family owned a plane, you flew on a plane.
My wife owned
here's
the plane.
Here's the issue.
Yeah.
This isn't some kind of partisan gotcha. When we are asking Americans to make serious sacrifices as we transition for the common good, and your family and or yourself are flying around on private jets, that smacks of hypocrisy. It actually hurts your cause.
I confess I'm a little confused, and I appreciate the argument or discussion that we've been having, but for me, it's a little too conceptual or, I don't know, metaphysical or theological or whatever you want to call it. I want to try to understand what you're asking us to do. Let's take two books that have been much discussed. The first one is called All Boys Aren't Blue, and I will quote from it. I put some lube on and got him on his knees, and I began to slide into him from behind.
Can you tell me what best looks like?
I'm not sure I'm fully understanding what you're getting at.
What does the best candidate look like?
Yeah.
The best FSO officer, we'll use that, the best foreign service officer. What does the best look like?
I would say the best for the particular job can look like any one of us, and that is the American way. That's what we support.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
So in that, we can't have it be that first we look for a diverse basket of candidates, as is your quote, and then after we look for the diverse basket, then we check the merit of that. the diversity can't be the number one. I want a diverse workforce. I'm glad that I served with a diverse force in the military, diverse colleagues as members of Congress. But that can't be the number one filter, because it does create an inherent bias, an inherent quota system.
That's the difference.
So human beings are
We are
about
creating
300,000 years old, but during these periods of time where it was 2,000 parts per million, life existed. As a matter of fact, we were in
not
one
people,
of the lowest
not
periods.
human beings
Mr.
walking
Secretary,
around.
We're in one
No.
of the lowest periods of carbon in the atmosphere in not only recorded history, in the history of life existing on the planet. In December of 2022, you told the Washington Post we need to remove 1.6 trillion tons of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere via direct air capture. The cost for that is about $1,000 per ton, or $1.6 quadrillion. Now, you said you didn't know, but since 2015, since the last El Nino, about 500 billion tons have been emitted into the atmosphere. During that same period of time, 2015, if you look at the temperature graph, this is from NOAA. The temperature has gone down. Show the next slide. This is from NASA satellite data. Temperature has gone down. You want to have the American taxpayers, my constituents that are having a hard time afford their groceries, pay for a car, buy a new home, spend $1.6 quadrillion to fix a problem that A, doesn't exist, and as a matter of fact, you might be exacerbating, because it's unknown. It is unknown at this time the low level of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere that might actually destroy life, because plant life all depends. As you know, Secretary, plant life all depends on CO2, and when we kill it, then we're done too. I yield the balance.
Congressman, let me just say that I don't agree with what you're saying out there for any number of reasons. I don't have time to go into all of them now, but I'll just tell you point blank that the difference between the periods you're looking at in terms of heat, et cetera, and human input is night and day, number one. Number two, why do you think 195 countries in the world, their prime ministers, their presidents?
Because they're grifting like you are, sir.
That's a pretty shocking statement, that you believe that all the scientists in the world are grifters, honestly.
Not all scientists agree with you, Mr. Secretary.
98% of all the scientists in the world.
Science isn't about agreement. It's not about consensus.
Sure, I'm happy the Department of Energy is out here making sure that we can all save money, because we're too dumb to figure out how to do it ourselves. Dr. Richmond, as I look at this, you're looking at a gas stove rule, a dishwasher rule, a washing machine rule, a clothes dryer rule, a general service lamp or light bulb rule, a refrigerator rule, and a new room air conditioner rule. And you said earlier that you do not coordinate with radical environmentalist groups, but in May, in a letter refusing to provide testimony at a hearing in this committee, DOE relied on a court-ordered consent decree initiated by radical environmentalist activist groups for the basis for not providing witnesses. If you don't coordinate, why was that the case?
So that, thank you for that question.
You don't have to thank me, ma'am. Just answer. It'd be great.
So that was to apply pressure for us to give a timeline for us to actually put the rule in place, which is now January 2020.
So, okay, fair enough. When is it? When must energy standards be updated per the statute?
So every 6 years, DOE is to look to see whether...
And consider them, right?
Yeah.
Okay, consider. Does that mean, does consider mean promulgate rules every 6 years?
No, it does not suggest that. What we do every 6 years is we look to see whether...
Okay, so when do you decide that it's finally time?
Every 6 years, it's
every 6 years you take a look to determine whether you like efficiency standards or not, but every 6 years you don't promulgate a rule, right? I just went through gas stove, refrigerator, air conditioner, clothes dryer, light bulb, washing machine, but every 6 years we haven't had one of them. So how come every 6 years we haven't had one if you look at them every 6 years?
Well, every they're not exactly all timed for the very same year, of course.
Well, they look like they're pretty well timed right now.
Well, these 6 are certainly,
Yeah,
but we have
yeah.
60 appliances that we work with.
Yeah, and washing machines, refrigerators, gas stoves are something that are found in most people's homes, even people on the lower end of the economic spectrum. Ma'am, I don't know what kind of gas stove you have in your house. And to the gentle lady from the other side of the aisle says it's not a ban. According to my figures, 4% of current gas stove tops available in the market today meet the rule, which means 96% of them don't.
Can you explain why crypto is such an attractive financial tool for terrorists, drug traffickers, and rogue nations?
I've always been deeply opposed to crypto, Bitcoin, et cetera. You pointed out the only true use case for it is criminals, drug traffickers, anti-money laundering, tax avoidance, and that is a use case because it is somewhat anonymous, not fully, and because you can move money instantaneously, and because it doesn't go through, as you mentioned, all these systems have been built up over many years, know your customers, sanctions, OFAC, they can get bypass all of that. If I was the government, I'd close it down.
Inclusion cannot be prioritized over safety and fairness. And Ranking Member Lee, if my testimony makes me transphobic, then I believe your opening monologue makes you a misogynist. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gaines. I now recognize Ms. Perry for her opening statements.
Good afternoon, Chairman McLean, Ranking Member Lee, and distinguished members of the subcommittee. My name is Sarah Parshall Perry. I am a senior legal fellow at the Heritage Foundation. As a former varsity athlete, the mother of a girls varsity athlete, and former senior counsel for civil rights at the Department of Education, I have, as the saying goes,
Madam Chair, excuse me, I move to have the gentlewoman's words taken down.
I didn't understand your answer to Senator Blackburn, so I just wanted to come back to that for a second, if I could. She asked you if you participated in any meetings at all related to the Hunter Biden laptop. Was that a yes or a no?
Senator, as a Department of Justice employee bound by Section 1-7 of the Justice Manual, as well as a judicial nominee, it's not appropriate for me, and I'm bound not to talk about.
Why isn't it appropriate for you? As a judicial nominee? Does that have anything to do with any case that you have, right? I'm asking you what you did in your former employment as the Deputy Chief of Staff to the FBI Director. Did you participate in any meetings related to the Hunter Biden laptop?
Senator, again, as a Department of Justice employee.
It sounds like you're not going to answer me. Is this going to be a I'm not going to answer you type deal?
Senator, I'm bound to follow the Code of Judicial Conduct.
The Code of Judicial Conduct doesn't have any bearing on this question whatsoever. What possible bearing could it have? That's a question mark.
Well, Senator, as the Code of Judicial Conduct requires integrity and independence in the judiciary, it requires judicial officers to act with.
It's not a get out of jail free card when you don't want to answer questions when you're under oath before a committee who's considering you for a lifetime appointment to the federal bench. I'm going to try one last time. Did you participate in any meetings during your time as Deputy Chief of Staff or Acting Chief of Staff related to the Hunter Biden laptop, yes or no?
Senator, again, I'm not permitted to answer.
Oh, you are permitted to answer. You don't want to answer.
Have you ever said something to the effect that, excuse me, at its core, the right to work movement is deeply racist?
Senator, I believe that in a number of speeches that I gave in my capacity as General Counsel of SEIU, I spoke about.
I mean, did you say that?
Senator, I believe I spoke about the historic.
No, it's not. I'm asking, did you say at its core the right to work movement is deeply racist? Because my state is a right to work state. You're going to be on the Fourth Circuit.
I spoke about the historic roots of the
Can
right
you
to
tell
work.
me yes or no that you said this? I mean, you either said it or you didn't.
The speech that you were referencing was a speech.
Never mind.
Ms. Berner, you didn't tell Senator Graham the truth, did you?
Senator, I took an oath to tell the truth, and I have done so faithfully.
Now, on February 22nd, 2018, you spoke to the American Constitution Society. And this is what you said. The right to work movement is deeply racist. You said that, didn't you?
Senator, I do not have that speech in front of me. I have spoken on a number of occasions about the
Turn
history.
your notes over to us. You didn't read them before you turned them over?
Senator, I've spoken on a number of occasions about the history. I was not speaking about.
Are you saying that you didn't say that?
Senator, I've spoken on a number of occasions about the
Ma'am,
history.
are you saying that you didn't say that?
If I have turned over all of my notes from my speeches.
I don't think you're telling the truth, Ms. Burnett.
You imposed the school mask mandate after Governor Cooper, whose administration you work for, vetoed a bill that would have required in-person schooling. You've also spoken publicly that you made decisions on whether to allow fans to attend football games or whether to lift mask mandates based on feelings and what your friends at other state public health agencies were doing. None of this suggests that you will push for the much-needed changes at CDC or help the agency break from its insular culture. I'd like to ask you if you have any regrets about the school closures, the mask mandates, or any other restrictive measures you imposed in North Carolina.
Well, thank you, Representative Denton. I'm very proud of the work that we did in North Carolina. I feel like we did that in a way that was very inclusive. We listened. I had great partners on both sides of the aisle in North Carolina as we did that work. You have to put yourself back in 2020 when we had very little information. We barely had any tests. We had very little PPE. We certainly didn't have vaccines or treatment. There were very few tools at our disposal to protect folks.
Would you impose those type restrictions today?
Well, the good news is we're in a new place. So, right, and I'm looking forward to turning this new chapter with CDC as we look forward. I want to make sure we're learning the lessons from the pandemic about transparency and about creating those infrastructures that we need to make sure that we can detect and respond to diseases. But I want to make sure that we are in a place where we don't have to get into that place again, right? So we are detecting.
We trust
and
the
responding.
science and not the feelings and the opinions. A lot of it was subjective, the 6-foot social distancing and all this. But anyway.
Since President Biden's been president, how many non-American citizens have come into our country illegally or on the basis of a claim of asylum?
Thank you, Senator. HSI, as an investigative agency, is...
Do you know the number?
No, Senator.
You're a senior member of Homeland Security, are you not?
That's correct.
Does anybody know the number? None of you know the number. Try 8 million. Now, of that 8 million, how many were children, Mr. Morant?
I don't have that number, Senator.
You don't know. Does anybody know? None of you know. Isn't that special?
I will tell you, when I saw this exhibit in 2020 that talked about whiteness in 2020, here we are, we're trying to have a society that rather than having all these silos and everybody being told that you're in privilege, you're in this, you're in that, and trying to pull things together, partisan politics is now trying to divide us. And I'm going to go through this, and this is just baffling to me. This is in the Smithsonian, assumptions about white culture. And it says rugged individualism, family structure, emphasis on scientific method, history, Protestant work ethic, religion, no tolerance from deviation from a single God concept. This is absolute anti-racial propaganda. Why would anything like this be in the Smithsonian Institute?
Now, it's my understanding, what I think you're seeing, I can't really see it, is
You should be very well versed in this. You were the head of the Smithsonian at the time.
No, let me explain. What it is there was a document that is the whiteness document that was put up online that I took down immediately because I think that the document itself was wrong and flawed. I do think, however, it's important for the Smithsonian to help the country grapple with questions of race. So I'm not going to run away from that. But I agree with you very much that that document is not the kind of document that should be at the Smithsonian. And if it's what I think it is, I pulled that down.
The Justice Department allowed the president's political appointees to weigh in on whether to charge the president's son. After United States Attorney for D.C., Matthew Graves, appointed by President Biden, refused to bring charges in March 2022, I watched United States Attorney Weiss tell a room full of senior FBI and IRS senior leaders on October 7, 2022, that he was not the deciding person on whether charges were filed. That was my red line.
Today, I sit here before you, not as a hero or a victim, but as a whistleblower compelled to disclose the truth. That said, in coming forward, I believe I'm risking my career, my reputation, and my casework outside of the investigation we are here to discuss. I ultimately made the decision to come forward after what I believe were multiple attempts at blowing the whistle at the Internal Revenue Service. It appeared to me, based on what I experienced, that the U.S. Attorney in Delaware in our investigation was constantly hamstrung, limited, and marginalized by DOJ officials as well as other U.S. attorneys.
Mr. Chairman, I really liked your colorful testimony. And you're right, we are blessed with the largest, most sophisticated, most innovative capital markets in the world. But we cannot take this for granted. Even a gold medalist must keep training. With all due respect, Mr. Chairman, if the U.S. capital markets are a gold medalist, you are the Tanya Harding of securities regulation, because you are kneecapping the U.S. capital markets with the avalanche of red tape coming out of your commission.
Suppose I were to purchase a Pokemon card. Would doing so constitute a security transaction?
You could purchase a Pokemon card. I don't know what the context is, but if you're just purchasing a Pokemon card.
If I purchase a Pokemon card, is that a security
retail
transaction?
Store, that's not a security.
Okay. If I were to purchase a tokenized Pokemon card on a digital exchange via a blockchain, is that a security transaction?
I'd have to know more.
Okay. So for you, the process of tokenization is what transforms a non-security transaction into a security transaction?
Look, if the investing
I thought you were technology neutral.
If the investing public is anticipating profits based upon the efforts of others and they're exchanging funds, that's the core.
I see my time has expired. So.
Do you remember where we left off, you and I?
I do. You're a very good questioner, sir.
All right, well, let me refresh. Let's bring some things up. Where we left off was, did you facilitate the payment for the Steele dossier for the Hillary Clinton campaign back in 2016? Because you were the CFO. You acknowledged that. You also said, in response to my question, that this payment was not something that I was aware of, quote unquote. Those are your words. Interesting things have occurred since then. John Podesta actually testified to a committee of Congress, and John Podesta testified to a question about, was Gary, meaning you, was he day-to-day, hands-on, signing every check? And so John Podesta testifies, actually he was under a deposition with a committee here in Congress. He says, yes, I don't know if he signed the checks, but he was there every day, meaning you. So let's circle back. Were you aware of the fact that the Hillary Clinton campaign actually paid for the Steele dossier, which unleashed one of the worst issues of intelligence malfeasance that our nation has ever seen?
No, sir, I answered this 6 months ago, and this is the same answer today. No.
You weren't aware of what was going on? Mr. Gensler, I find that very interesting because, if I listen to some of the people and the staff that have left the SEC, you're very aware of everything that is going on. It's actually your MO. You're very hands-on. So you're going to tell the committee right now you had no idea that the Hillary Clinton campaign, of which you were the CFO on, sent money to Perkins Coie for a dossier that was phony, that led to the spying on of a presidential campaign in 2016. You were not aware of any of this?
Look, sir, as a chief financial officer in a political campaign, I was not aware of what a law firm was doing with some of the money that they got.
Dr. Biggs, would you agree with me that inflation disproportionately hurts a person who's living from Social Security check to Social Security check?
Actually, no, I wouldn't.
Why?
Because Social Security is adjusted for inflation. The rest of your
So you're telling me with 16% inflation and your Social Security check went up marginally, that person's not more significantly impacted?
No, if I received 100% of my income from Social Security and Social Security COLA is accounted for inflation, my 100% of my income is inflation adjusted. If I received half of my income from Social Security and half from somewhere else, my total income is only half protected against inflation.
Oh, okay. That's certainly not one person, not one senior citizen has told me this.
Raise your hand, please, for me if you're a member, a dues-paying member of the American Bar Association. So 2 out of 6 are members? Judge Bessert, why aren't you a member?
Senator, I was a member for many years of the American Bar Association.
Why'd you get out?
Honestly, Senator, when I was a member, my law firm paid the dues.
Yeah.
And so I don't pay the dues for the American Bar Association, but I was very involved.
Find it
for many
irrelevant and not worth the money?
No, sir. As you know from my record, I actually co-chaired the section of litigation for a number of years, and I thought it was very beneficial as a lawyer.
But it wasn't important enough to you to pay yourself?
It wasn't so much that, Senator. It's just that many of the benefits of the American Bar Association, at least for judges, I'm already participating in what the administrative offices provide with training, which is really what I was doing as a lawyer.
It was beneficial to you if somebody else paid for it?
No, sir. It's just that as a lawyer, I used it primarily for legal education.
Okay.
And as a judge.
I don't want to spend too much time on this. Just for the record, 2 out of 6 of our nominees today have chosen to be dues-paying members of the American Bar Association. You recently joined a lot of other academics. You signed a letter demanding that elite institutions and universities stop accepting money from fossil fuel companies. Is that correct?
This is correct.
You consider Tulane an elite university?
I would like to think that we have a high standard of excellence in our education and our research.
Okay. Well, the Murphy family of Murphy Oil and the Deming family of Murphy Oil have recently given Tulane $25 million. Have you called on Tulane to give that money back?
Well, it's not, they didn't give that money to my unit or the department or school that I work in.
Have you called on Tulane to give that money back, or you think that's okay for them to keep it?
It's their prerogative, not mine.
Okay. But yet you just signed a letter saying that all elite universities should refuse fossil fuel money. Did you put a footnote in there and say, except my own?
Well, what I'd like to say, Senator, is that I believe it raises a conflict of interest for those that research climate change that are supported by the fossil fuel industry.
Yeah, but then why don't you ask Tulane to give the $25 million back?
Well, I think in the context, if that money were to be used to support climate research, information, disinformation, or whatever it may be, then that may be an appropriate conflict of interest. But I think in the context of which
you don't see the hypocrisy here?
It is a hypocrisy in those that may read and interpret it as such.
Maybe it's like Washington. If there weren't double standards, there wouldn't be standards at all.
He used his father, Hunter Biden used his father, the Vice President of the United States, to threaten his victim, who he had just trafficked for sex. And the Department of Justice refuses to speak to me? Hunter Biden needs to be held accountable for his sexual exploitation of women. And we've shown more evidence. We've shown evidence. This is what it looks like. A bathing suit is not pornography.
Well, we can't see it from down there. So you didn't make it available to the minority before you started.
I've seen it before. It's on the internet. It's everywhere.
You are submitting a naked woman's body.
This is a bathing suit. This is a bathing suit.
And it has not been clear before this committee.
Glasses on. Do you wear them or not? It's a
I have
bathing
contacts
suit.
in. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Gentlemen, and this committee is afraid to bring him before us and put him on the record. Shame. And the question was raised, what does this have to do with it? It has everything to do with it.
I think that if my Republican colleagues had a so-called smoking gun, they would have presented it by now and would have talked about it nonstop.
Can the gentlelady read a bank statement, an email, a text message?
Are you asking her to yield, reclaiming my time. Thank you. Reclaiming my time. Instead, we're sitting here with no fact witnesses and no evidence in this sham so-called impeachment to distract from their inability to fulfill their basic duty.
He lied when he was vice president. He lied as a candidate to gain the office of President of the United States. Now, this committee has uncovered the truth, and it is time to impeach this compromised commander-in-chief. Mr. Chairman, I yield.
Gentlelady yields back.
Chairman, point of order, if I could. I didn't want to interrupt the good gentlelady from Colorado, but you cannot engage in personalities against the President of the United States.
We've established that, Mr. Ranking Member.
Okay, and so you cannot say that Joe Biden lied. First of all, he didn't lie.
Mr.
But
Ranking Member,
even if
we've
he had
established
to,
at the beginning of the hearing.
you can't say it, Mr. Chairman. I hope you agree with me. This is parliamentarian.
This is.
I can provide you all the
Thank you, Mr.
cases.
Chair.
You're literally pushing a program in the academies that says if you're a cisgender woman, a transgender woman, a non-binary, agender, bigender, two-spirit, demigender. What's demigender?
Sir, that's a term of the people that are eligible for that particular scholarship that
what's
is
a demigender
available
person?
to. It's a person who looks at their gender in a different way than I do, sir.
Well, sure, that's all of these people. You're a cisgender man. You don't even get to apply.
Well,
do you know what demigender really means?
I'm not really sure, sir.
Right. So do you know what agender means? All one word, not a space gender, but agender.
Sir, I don't.
Right. So here we are pushing a fellowship, calling for people that you don't even know what the words mean. And the number one group of people, the cisgender men, are excluded. Now, in the name of diversity, equity, and inclusion, should we be pushing programs that we can't define that exclude the largest group of service members?
Well, sir, first, that program is not an Air Force Academy program. It's a program open to our entire country.
Right,
so
but
we
you guys advocate for it within the academy.
Missouri versus Biden case in the district court, the court explained, quote, if the allegations made by the plaintiffs are true, the present case arguably involves the most massive attack on free speech in United States history, close quote. Court went on to find that the plaintiffs were reasonably likely to succeed on the merits at trial, entered a preliminary injunction. The Fifth Circuit has affirmed. The Supreme Court has taken jurisdiction of the case. Of course, that's all civil litigation. Is any criminal investigation or prosecution of the persons responsible for that activity in the FBI, CISA, and at the White House and their co-conspirators underway in the Civil Rights Division?
Congressman, I'm not familiar with this litigation, but happy to bring your question back.
Thank you. So let me just make sure I understand that. You are not aware of the Missouri versus Biden litigation that is currently being taken up by the United States Supreme Court. Is that correct?
Unfortunately, I'm not, Congressman.
And in that article, you argued that male prisoners should be allowed to claim they are transgender in order to be assigned to a female prison, didn't you?
As I said to Senator Lee, that was an article which arose from a symposium, which I just moderated the panel, and then summarized for the symposium edition the different arguments and issues that were raised.
Well, I've read your article, and I don't think that's accurate. You identify certain special populations, transgender people, immigrants, and racial minorities. And you're very critical of the way the California prison system treats them. For example, I'm going to quote here, your words, not mine. The prison system relies heavily on a dichotomous sex-based means of classification. Prisoners are classified by their biological attributes rather than their gender identification. As described by one of the people in the California prison system, the classification process is gender neutral. We really don't distinguish between transgender and non-transgender inmates. Did I read that correctly?
Senator, I don't recall it word by word, but
There it
think
is.
so.
Hasn't the United States government built a giant wall along Jordan's border?
On the border
With
between
United
Jordan
States taxpayer dollars, has the U.S. government built a wall along Jordan's border?
the U.S. government has worked with Jordan to enhance its border security in a variety of ways, Senator.
Let's be clear. U.S. taxpayer dollars have been deployed in this regard. Is that correct?
That is correct.
That now AAA is projecting that gas prices will hit a national average of $6 a gallon by the month of August. Is this acceptable to you?
No, it is not. And you can thank the activity of Vladimir Putin for invading Ukraine and pulling
Oh,
essentially
nonsense.
those bills.
With all due respect, Madam Secretary, that's utter nonsense. In January of 2021, the average gas price in my state was $2.07. 8 months later, 8 months later, long before Vladimir Putin invaded Ukraine, that price was up over 30%, and it has been going up consistently since. What are you doing to reverse this administration's policies that are drawing down our own supply of energy in this country, that are throttling oil and gas production in the United States of America? What are you doing about
With
it?
respect, sir, it is not administration policies that have affected supply and demand.
How can you say that when the price of gas was up over 30% from
let me
January
answer.
to... you answer my
happy to
questions,
answer.
and it's my time, Madam Secretary, so why don't you answer my question? From January to August, the price of gasoline was up over 30%. In my state alone, it has been a continuous upward tick since then. And here's what your president did when he first came to office. He immediately re-entered the Paris Climate Accord. He canceled the Keystone Pipeline. He halted leasing programs in Anwar. He issued a 60-day halt on all new oil and gas leases and drilling permits on federal lands and waters. That's nationwide. That accounts, by the way, for 25% of U.S. oil production. He directed federal agencies to eliminate all supports for fossil fuels. He imposed new regulations on oil and gas and methane emissions.
And I'd like to ask to speak on the nomination.
Senator, we've debated these two nominees twice.
Mr. Chairman, I would also like to speak on the nomination.
I understand what you'd like to do, but I'm saying that in fairness, we have debated these nominees twice, and I ask the clerk to call the roll.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr.
you're
Chairman,
denying us an opportunity to speak on a nominee?
I mean, third time, no.
Okay, do this. Just
we don't
do
have
it.
a right to speak under the rules? Under the third time, I'd say no.
So you're just going to make it up?
So yeah.
I'd like to
There's going to be a lot
speak
of
to-
consequences
I'd like to
coming
speak
here.
to him, Mr.
You're going to have a
Chairman.
lot of consequences coming if you go down this road.
You better
I've
believe
cautioned
it.
you. I've cautioned a lot of you.
The clerk will call the roll.
Listen to me. I've cautioned a lot of you.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, don't we get the opportunity to speak?
We're in a roll call.
So you're telling us to shut up?
Even though multiple
You
members
want
have
us
asked to
to
speak.
shut up? Is that what you're saying?
A lot of people didn't speak on the two nominees before.
We've done.
Would you raise your hand if you did not speak?
I did not have a.
Senator Cornyn didn't even have a chance to speak.
Senator Blackburn had a chance to speak.
We've got several folks, Mr. Chairman, who didn't have a chance to speak.
We want to tell you again why these nominees are awful.
Or in Senator Cornyn's case, tell you for the first time. You're just going to sit there and ignore us?
Senator Blackburn, have you spoken on these nominees?
I've not had the
like
opportunity to
to?
speak. I would like very much to speak on Mr.
Mr. Chairman,
Casaby.
I urge you to let Senator Blackburn speak.
Senator Cornyn as well. Senator Cornyn hasn't had a chance to speak.
That's correct. Point of order, Mr. Chairman. You can't limit debate without invoking Rule 4. You haven't done that.
We have debated.
We've debated on prior occasions when we didn't have a quorum. That vote didn't count. We've got people who are here now who weren't here then who would like to speak.
Can we speak on the other nominees?
Or is your plan just to end all debate today? Is your plan to end all debate? Do you have an answer? You're going to rely on someone whispering in your ear. What's your plan?
No.
No, we're not. Okay, listen, here's the deal. We worked 7 weeks to trying to solution the asylum problems. You boycotted the committee.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know if you've left us any alternative but to deny the committee a quorum.
Your testimony is the 280,000 queries of American citizens was unintentional. That's your final answer?
That's how they were assessed by that team that did the review. I'm not satisfied with that. That's
I
why
don't believe
we've
that at all.
implemented further measures, as I announced earlier today.
Yeah, I don't believe that at all. And frankly, we've heard from your agency 1,000 times that you're going to do better, will do better. You promised after the abuses of Title I you'd do better, and then we find out that in the meantime you're illegally querying 280,000 American citizens' data. It's unbelievable, frankly.
Essentially, the industry, schools, I don't know if that's me or
That's
not.
the NFL, man.
Is it? Avenues and levers and pulling.
Thank you. I'm turning it back over to the real chairman, but I just want to say next up is the Deion Sanders of the Republican caucus, Ted Cruz.
That may be the kindest introduction I have ever gotten in my life. I will say to the senator from New Jersey, he may find that introduction played in attack ads against him in his home state. So I apologize for that ahead of time.
We have a federal buildings fund is where agencies that have space in buildings or have leased space pay rent effectively.
Right.
And so that amount every year is around more or less $11 billion.
With potentially billions of dollars wasted each year on underused assets, what is GSA doing to save taxpayers' money?
Yeah, thanks for that question. We take this very seriously. I could not agree with you more that we have an opportunity to really save billions of dollars for taxpayers.
Okay, so let me follow up. So how are you determining when it's necessary to downsize office space?
So our team has done a portfolio-wide review, national portfolio review, to figure out which buildings we should keep and which buildings we should dispose of. I think that this is a huge first step. We announced last week already that 23 of those are going to be put up through the disposal process.
I think it's incredibly dangerous to accuse Secretary Mayorkas of aiding and abetting crimes. As you well know, you need to have the intent to do that. And it is clear that whether you disagree or not with Secretary Mayorkas's approach to dealing with the border, that to accuse him of aiding and abetting crime is very serious and is, I think, unwarranted in this situation.
Well, gentleman yield?
Yes.
Look, I live in a border state, you don't. And I've dealt with this issue for 25 years. I've never seen it this bad. It's his dereliction of duty that has created this problem in the United States. 7 million people. How are we going to deal with that? No legal status, human trafficking, fentanyls. Look, we will disagree on this one, but I have to say that the change of policy has created this problem, and he knows better.
For the sake of clarity, really, I'd like to show a video, a brief interview that was conducted by an expert in gender reassignment surgeries from Oregon's healthcare system.
Madam Chair.
Madam Chair.
I object. I move that the committee adjourn. This has turned into a circus.
But the one thing that is very new is genital surgery in someone that has undergone pubertal suppression. I do facial, chest surgery, and genital surgery. But the majority of my practice and sort of where my passion lies is really genital surgery cases. So I do a lot of vaginoplasty and a lot of phalloplasty.
Last week from Dr. Blair Peters, who is a gender-affirming surgery expert at the University of Oregon's Health and Science Division. Earlier today, just a few minutes ago, our colleagues on the left said that we didn't know what we were talking about. So when presented with a video that details exactly what it means to conduct surgery on a minor for gender-affirming surgery, they left the room. They don't want the facts.
I'd love to do it right now.
Well, stand your butt up then.
You stand your butt up.
Oh, hold on.
Big guy.
Oh, stop it.
Is that your solution, everybody?
Keep in mind, too, this isn't anything new. Andrew Jackson challenged 9 people to a duel when he was president, and he also knocked one guy out at a White House dinner.
Let's get it on!
Please don't make an assumption that I'm anti-union. But I also want to set the record straight. All three of you guys have talked about employers being intimidating their employees. But you guys haven't ever spoke about when the unions try to unionize, the intimidation they have to other people that aren't wanting to unionize. You guys don't mention that. Because, see, I started with nothing. Absolutely nothing. In fact, I started below nothing. And I started growing this little plumbing company with 6 employees to now we have over 300 employees. And back in 2009, you guys tried to unionize me. My guys were making money. They were getting paid more than the union halls were paying their plumbers. Our benefits were better. But because we started bidding jobs that were union jobs and winning those, union pipe fitters decided they were going to come after us. They would show up at my house. They'd be leaning up against my trucks. I'm not afraid of a physical confrontation. In fact, sometimes I look forward to it. That's not my problem. But when you're doing that to my employees, and then when that didn't work, they started picketing our job site, saying, shame on Mullen. Shame on Mullen. For what? For what? Because we were paying higher wages? Because we had better benefits and we wasn't requiring them to pay your guys' exorbitant salaries? You talk about CEOs that are making all this money, and what do you make, Mr. O'Brien?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question.
Yeah, I know
Senator.
what you make, because in 2019, your salary was, what is this, $193,000? I'm sure you got some pay raises since then.
Yeah, when I was a
And the average UPS driver, the feeder driver, makes $35,000 a year.
That's
and what do you bring?
That's
to the
inaccurate.
Table? Hold on a second.
That's inaccurate. State
no,
facts.
I've got it right here.
State facts. That's inaccurate.
The average UPS feeder driver makes $35,000. If you don't know your facts, then maybe you should.
I know them because I negotiate the contract.
So I say one thing to you. What do you bring for that salary?
What do I bring?
Yeah. What job have you committed, or have you started? What job have you created? One job, other than sucking the paycheck out of somebody else that you want to say that you're trying to provide because you're forcing them to pay dues?
No, we don't force anyone.
Senator, you've asked the
You're
question.
out of line.
Let him
man.
answer
Actually,
the
I
question.
haven't, and don't tell me I'm out of line.
You are out of line.
Don't tell me I'm out of line.
Well, you frame.
Don't tell me.
You
I'm
frame.
making a
You
statement.
frame.
Sir,
The statement
you need
like
to
a
shut
tough
your
guy.
mouth
Yeah.
because you don't know
You're
what
gonna tell me to
talking
shut my
about.
mouth?
Yes,
Yeah.
I did.
Hold it.
Yeah.
Hold it.
Yes, I
Tough
did.
guy. I'm not
Senator,
afraid of physical.
You don't have
hold
to be,
it.
but don't sit there and tell me I'm out of line.
Senator, you made a statement. You asked the question.
I didn't ask a question.
You did.
You did.
I answered the question.
You asked the question about how
Well, it
much
was
money you made.
rhetorical.
Let him answer.
It was a rhetorical
Well,
question.
you may think it's rhetorical.
It was
Sounded to me
rhetorical.
like a question. Let him answer the question.
I'm not yielding my time to him. So if you're going to let me keep my time, that's fine.
You'll have your time. Let him. You ask
your
a question. He has
So-
a right to answer that.
As far as my salary goes, my salary, if you follow me around, I actually look at this building. I bet you I work more hours than you do, twice as many hours.
That's impossible. But
No, that's true.
Sir, you don't even know what hard work is. You
Secondly,
wanna follow my schedule,
Secondly, I'll do it in
please
a
follow.
minute. Secondly, UPS feeder drivers, and you can quote Carol Tomei, who quoted this, they make $93,000 on the lower end. Some of them
said
making
feeder drivers.
$150,000.
I said feeder drivers.
Feeder drivers, tractor-trailer drivers. Some of them making $150,000 per year.
Some of them do.
And
I don't
most of them
disagree with that.
most of them
After
make
you've been
over-
there
most
four-
of them-
after you've been there 4 years.
Most of them make over $1,000.
Okay.
Most of them make over $100,000.
So reclaiming my time, I go back to the whole fact that, sir, you haven't created a job.
We haven't?
You haven't been there. You haven't.
Sure we have.
You haven't.
Sure we have.
Tell me one job that you created.
What are you talking? Be specific.
You're
Like,
an
what do you mean?
employer?
No, we're not
You
an
employ
employer.
people?
No, but it's funny.
So, no, then hold on, then
we
that's
create
not creating
opportunity.
jobs.
We create opportunity because we
Sir,
hold
that's
we
not-
hold greedy CEOs
That's
like yourself
not-
accountable.
You're calling me a greedy CEO.
Oh yeah, you are.
Hilarious.
You want to attack my salary? I'll attack yours. What
go
did you
ahead.
make? What did you make when you owned your company?
When I made my company, I kept my salary down at about $50,000 a year because I invested every penny into it.
Okay, all right. You mean you hid money?
No, I didn't hide. Oh, hold on a second.
Okay, go ahead.
He said that's out of line. You
All
said
right,
I
we're
was
e-
out of
we're
line.
even, we're
We're not even. We're not even close to being even. You think
know.
it's smart? You think you're funny?
No,
You're
you do-
not.
You think you're funny?
No, I never said. Did I
You
smile?
frame
Did I laugh?
your opening
Hold on,
statement.
hold on. That's the.
You frame your opening
right.
statement
No,
saying you're a tough
Senator,
guy.
continue.
This-
Senator, please
This
continue
is
your
behavior,
statements.
but sir, this is. I think it's great that you're doing this because
Me too.
this shows their behavior on how they try to come in and
No, I-
unionize a
know.
shop.
No, it's
and they
just-
say about intimidation, and it's not about intimidation.
This
it's
may
not the
show your
employee's
behavior
support.
here. But stay on the issue, please.
The issue is, if you're really for the employee, then why are you against right to work? Why are you against private ballots? If you're really about the employee, let the employee make the choice. I'm not anti-union, but when you don't want to have a private ballot, that's not intimidating? That's not intimidating? Why wouldn't you want a private ballot? That is intimidating the employee. If you don't want a right to work state, don't force somebody to pay dues to an organization they may not agree with. Don't force somebody to do something they don't want to do. That's called employee choice. If you want to be part of a union, God bless you, be part of a union. I have no issue with that. But don't sit up here and say that an employee is the one that intimidates their employers are intimidating their employees not becoming a union.
Okay, Senator,
That's not
thank
accurate.
you. Thank you very much, Senator Murray.
tracks the union dues, it's actually higher. Non-union employees are getting paid by roughly 1 to 2%, which is exactly what union dues are, is 1 to 2% of their salary. So I just wanted to set the record straight on that, and that's coming from statistics, all right? Now, let's talk about Mr. O'Brien himself, his behavior. As everybody knows, and it's here in the last time, him and I kind of had a back and forth. Appreciate your demeanor today. It's quite different. But after you left here, you got pretty excited about the keyboard. In fact, you tweeted at me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. And let me read what the last one said. It said, greedy CEO who pretends like he's self-made. Sir, I wish you was in the truck with me when I was building my plumbing company. Myself and my wife was running the office because I sure remember working pretty hard and long hours. Pretends like he's self-made. What a clown. Fraud. Always has been, always will be. Quit the tough guy act in these Senate hearings. You know where to find me. Any place, anytime, cowboy. Sir, this is a time, this is a place. If you want to run your mouth, we can be two consenting adults. We can finish it here.
Okay, that's fine. Perfect.
You want to do it now?
I'd love to do it right now.
Well, stand your butt up then.
You stand your butt up.
Oh, hold on.
Big guy.
No, stop it.
Is that your
All right.
solution every
Hold it. No, sit down. Sit down. Okay. You know, you're a United States Senator. Sit down.
Active.
Oh, okay.
Sit down, please.
All right.
Can I respond, Mr.
Hold
Chairman?
it. Hold it. If
Hold
we
on.
can't, no,
This is
I have
what
the
he
mic.
said.
I'm sorry.
This is
Hold
what
it.
he said.
You'll have your time.
Okay.
Can I respond?
Oh, no, you can't. This is a hearing. And God knows the American people have enough contempt for Congress. Let's not
I don't
make
like
it worse.
thugs and bullies.
You have,
And that's
you
what-
have
I don't
the
like
mic.
you because you
Hold
just
it.
described yourself.
Hold it. You have the mic.
Yeah.
You have time.
All right.
Make your statement.
Then let's do this, because I did challenge you and I accepted your challenge, and you went quiet.
No, I didn't go quiet. I was.
hold on.
You challenged me to a cage match,
No,
acting like a
sir.
12-year-old schoolyard
Hold it.
bully.
Excuse
Sir,
me.
hold on.
Hold it. No, excuse me. I have the
I will
mic.
say exactly.
Senator
what you
Mullen,
said.
I have the mic. You have questions on any economic issues, anything that said, go for it. We're not here to talk about physical abuse.
You brought.
We're not
him
talking
in.
about, of course I
And,
did.
and let me
He's-
let me show you his hearing, because I want to expose this thug to who he is. And
If you don't point at me, that's disrespectful.
All right.
I don't care about respecting you at all. I respect
don't
people
respect
that I
you at all.
respect. So
All right, hold it.
let me
Hold it. No.
You're one of
Hold
100
it.
of the most
Hold
elite
it,
people
please.
acted.
Please. All right. This is excuse me. This is a hearing to discuss economic issues. All right. If you have questions for Mr. O'Brien or anybody else on what he has said, go for it. But we're not here to talk about fights or anything else.
I'm quoting exactly what he said.
You can
and
say
this
what
is-
you want,
This is
but-
your witness
This
you
is
brought.
my
And let me.
witness.
I'm exposing him.
You can
as a
talk
person
anything
who
you
he
want.
is. So
But
in
no fight-
2013,
Nope.
in 2013, O'Brien was suspended by the Teamsters for intimidating your own members. In 2014, you were part of, what would you say, organizing the harassment, intimidation of the Top Shelf crew.
Chef, not chef.
Top Chef, okay. And then, and I think in the reports they said sexual, racist, and homophobic slurs and death threats. 14 tires were sliced, and 5 Teamsters were arrested. And you said, well, I had nothing to do with it. But however, in that same statement, you said, but if I get called to testify, I'll plead the fifth. This is the witness you brought in here. In 2017, you were removed as lead negotiator by then President Hoffa for UPS for your actions. And then in 22, when this guy was elected, what he said after he got elected was he wanted to bring the mob mentality back to the Teamsters. This is your guy.
And you're obviously going to give him a chance to respond to your questions.
Absolutely, absolutely, because this is my question. Because you called me out. I didn't call you out.
Yeah, you did.
You said anytime, any place.
That's that. Let's get the record
Okay.
straight.
Miss, hold it. No.
Hold on.
Senator Mullen, do you have a question for the witness?
Yeah. I
Okay,
think that's what
let's
I'm getting
hear
at.
it.
So, anytime, any place.
No, that's not.
April is a charity event.
No, that's not. That's not. No.
No, it's a he.
No,
Sir, he said it, and this is my
He is
time,
here to
and you
tell.
just set
No.
parameters on what the questions can or cannot be asked, and I'll ask.
No,
you
you're
the
not going to.
question.
We're not going to be talking about
Yes, we
physical
did.
confrontation.
Oh, this is about charity for a union charity because this
This
is for
is-
firefighters. And
Do you have a
policemen.
question on his testimony?
April.
Grow up.
April
Will you
next
please
You
year.
have
grow
a
up? You're an
question
embarrassment.
on his. Let's not
You
be.
said it.
You're an embarrassment.
Embarrassment.
You said
You're
it,
an
and I'm just
embarrassment.
simply answering it.
You
Senator
reached
Mullen,
out
go
to
hold
your
it,
buddies.
hold it. Senator Mullen, you made some charges.
Charges?
Mr. O'Brien, do you want to respond to
Yeah, go
the
ahead,
question?
please.
Yeah, I mean, look, the reality of it is,
Accept my challenge,
Mr.
tough guy.
Mullen, tough guy.
Hold it. Answer the questions.
All right, you're one. He made a lot of statements, right? And his statements are fiction at best.
Fiction, I read them.
Can you answer?
What?
Answer the question, please.
I can't understand him, to be honest with you.
All right.
He rambles so much. What was your question, actually?
You said I made a lot of statements.
No, but what's your question? I don't understand your question. Could you repeat it?
You said anytime, any place.
What's your question?
Accept the challenge.
What challenge?
You said anytime, any place. I'm accepting yours, so why don't you come
What
back?
challenge? What challenge are you talking
April
about?
30th. How about we do it for a charity at the Smoking Guns in Tulsa, Oklahoma?
No, we're not going to be
what was the
talking about
challenge?
physical confrontations here.
You want to fight me?
What'd you say about anytime, any place?
Let's have coffee, discuss our differences.
Oh, that's what you said.
Yeah, that's right, exactly.
All right, well, let's sit down and have coffee.
Let's do it.
All right.
I'd love to.
But
It's funny how you're backing out.
Okay.
I don't back on anything.
You did.
You're the one. You're a 100.
Senator-
Should be the most influential people in this country making changes.
Senator
You're
Hassan-
focused on.
Okay.
You're
Thank
focused
you.
on
Why did
debate
you
that's not even
keep
relevant.
texting
You're an
me? They went
embarrassment.
silent.
You're an
Excuse me.
embarrassment.
They went
That's what you are.
silence after
You're an embarrassment to the
text.
state of
This
Oklahoma.
hearing is about the condition of the working class in America.
You
That's
brought a
what we're
thug
talking.
into this
You're the biggest thug here.
You brought him in.
All right,
You're the biggest thug. Even your
I don't know
colleagues call you
why
a
you do
joke.
what you're doing, Senator Hassan.
Thank you very much, Mr.
Senator
Chair.
Hassan, you got a
Senator
question?
Mullen, please yield. I've been recognized.
No.
Here more than 4 days a week. God forbid it should mean that we actually vote on more than a few bills a day. Right. It is disgraceful. I'm ready to work, and it may be hard for some members to adjust to on the other side, but I would say that we should do this for the people we represent to ensure that these regulations that are promulgated by a bureaucracy that is unresponsive. You know, the Department of Health and Human Services from 2001 to 2017 issued 2,952 rules. 77% were unconstitutionally issued without a principal agency officer approval. So nobody accountable to the people signed off on these things. Of the Food and Drug Administration final rules, 98% were invalid. So we got an unelected, unaccountable bureaucracy issuing thousands and thousands of rules, and the American people are unrepresented. So would the gentleman yield for a question? This legislation is important for that purpose, and for those who were upset about the bill that was passed by this body to actually address the debt limit. You may not have liked the bill, but you can't deny that this body passed the bill. In fact, this is the only body that passed the bill, and you also can't deny that none of you voted. So the crisis that is occurring belongs completely, the crisis blame belongs to the other end of Pennsylvania Avenue and the other end of the hallway in the Senate for their failure to put forward any kind of proposal that could pass muster in the Senate. And with that, I would yield to the gentleman for a question.
In your view, why is this bill constitutional under the Supreme Court principles and enunciated in Chadha?
The bill is constitutional because it retains those powers which were delegated to the administrative agencies in the first place, within Congress's authority to take back those powers which were delegated. So I see no problem with the constitutionality of it, and I'm happy to yield to the gentleman from Arizona for his comments as well.
Yeah, thanks so much. So in Chadha, you had a kind of a bizarre situation where a bill was taken up in judiciary, but not ever taken up. I shouldn't say it was referred to, but it was removed from judiciary and was taken to the floor for a vote. Now, what Chadha turned on was that particular piece of legislation actually was removing a regulation that had already been put in place and was doing so without bicameralism without presentment. What this bill does is completely different. It effectively blocks a regulation from becoming effective. That's very, very different than taking a regulation that's there and without bicameralism and without presentment, then stepping in. That's why this bill, it doesn't even fall under CHOP because of just the process that we've had here. This does not allow a single house to be partial bicameralism, and it actually kind of in a way presumes that regulation.
Diversity, 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 diverse, diversity, diversity, diversity,
diversity, diversity, diversity, diversity,
diversity, diversity, diversity, diverse, diversity, diversity,
diversity, diversity, diverse, diverse, diversity, 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 diverse, diversity, diversity.